The story opens with a monstrous creature roaring, baring its sharp teeth and multiple eyes. It's the year 2045 on Earth, and humanity is locked in a desperate war against monsters. In the heat of battle, a soldier is blindsided by a sudden enemy attack. Caught completely off guard, he can't react in time as a blow strikes him squarely from behind. Looming over the destructive scene, a giant monster surveys the soldiers fallen on the ground. Seeing an attack hurtling his way, a lone soldier wonders if this is how his story ends. Paralyzed on the ground, the young man can only watch as the shadowy energy closes in. But at the last possible second, a mysterious ally appears, saving him with a flash of his sword. Furiously, the skeletal monster spins around to confront whoever dared to interfere with its attack. Before the warrior materializes a dark creature, even larger and more menacing than the last. Without a moment's hesitation, the swordsman charges, his glowing blade slicing through the creature's tentacles. Despite this aid, the army remains outmatched and another soldier is sent flying. Just then, a new figure emerges from the chaos, weapon in hand and a look of pure determination. He swiftly takes aim and fires at one of the enemies, shielding his comrades. This is Hansung, commander of Earth's last defense force, who orders everyone back to their feet. The soldier who was saved scrambles up, while Hansung readies his rifle for the fight ahead. The commander takes his stance. For decades, humanity has been locked in this war against the monsters. After countless battles against this shadowy threat, only a handful of human fighters remained. Yet, the MC continues to face the monsters alone on the desolate battlefield. Hansung stares down the enemy before him, their ultimate goal finally within grasp. With his rifle glowing in intense blue, Hansung prepares to unleash a powerful shot. But out of nowhere, an immense golden magic circle materializes before him, catching him completely by surprise. His eyes widening in shock, the commander can only wonder what in the world he's seeing. In the blink of an eye, the portal engulfs him, whisking him away to an unknown location. Left behind, one of his soldiers shouts for his leader, utterly confused by the turn of events. Within a dark void, golden chains manifest as a mysterious voice calls out to Hansung. The MC appears bound by these chains, as cloaked figures murmur about the hero's arrival. Confused by the glowing shackles, the protagonist wonders where on Earth he has been taken. An old man in a robe welcomes the hero from another world to his empire. He explains that while this is sudden, they are begging the young man to defeat the Demon King. Outraged, Hansung demands to know what they're talking about, insisting he should be in Korea. The elder, however, simply tells him to be quiet and begins weaving a strange spell. Instantly, the binding oath activates, and an intense pain shoots through the MC's body. The old man states the magic won't harm him, provided he is obedient and civilized. Annoyed, the commander questions when exactly he had been anything but civil to them. The group's leader once again asks the hero to defeat the malevolent Demon King. They then offer him a sword, pleading with him to save their empire. The old man adds that if he succeeds, they might just be able to send him back to his own world. With sinister smiles, the group asks if Hansung will accept their little request. The protagonist looks down, a single tear rolling down his cheek, feeling he has no other choice. Left with no other option, a tearful protagonist agrees to do as they command. And so, Hansung was summoned to a different world, forced to fight as an empire's hero. To fulfill his end of the bargain, the MC worked tirelessly, joining countless expeditions. He fought without rest, defeating every monster that crossed his path in the name of the empire. After 10 long years, he finally vanquished the Demon King and wondered if he was at last free. But the old mage approaches, informing him that it's time to reveal his next mission. The hero is furious, yelling that this wasn't part of their deal, but the old man insists the job isn't done. According to the elder, people who oppose the empire still exist and must be eliminated. His next target is Battle of the Knight's Kingdom. If the MC takes him out, he'll finally be free. The mage then asks with a sickeningly sweet smile for the hero to help them just a little bit longer. The protagonist thinks to himself that a dog on a leash has no choice, cursing those wretched old men. Unable to refuse, the hero sets off for the Knight's Kingdom and launches a full-scale assault. In the ensuing battle, Hansung successfully corners his target, striking him down with his sword. Battle calls him a fool for obeying the empire, but the protagonist insists he had no choice. With a sorrowful expression, the commander apologizes to the knight named Beidel. The blonde knight, with a blood-stained smile, tells Hansung not to be sorry. He warns that soon the hero from another world will be discarded by the empire in the very same way. Mission accomplished, the young man believes he can finally return home. But in that very instant, a blade pierces his back. It's one of the empire's own knights. The knight cynically thanks the hero from another world for a job well done. In utter shock, the hero recognizes his assailant as Count Brandenburg, the man who just betrayed him. The count mocks him, sneering that he served his purpose as the empire's loyal hunting dog. Burning with hatred, the young man realizes it was all a lie. They never intended to send him home. The knight scoffs, asking why they would, since a hunting dog only knows how to bite, and strikes again. With one final blow, the traitor bids Hansung farewell as he collapses lifelessly to the ground. As he lay dying, the protagonist thinks that while he suspected they'd never let him go, the reality is still frustrating. Vowing revenge, he swears he will make the cursed empire pay with its complete and utter annihilation. That night, the hero from another world met his tragic end at the hands of the very empire he served. But as one life faded, another sparked in existence. He was reborn as the infant son of a duchess. His new mother, a beautiful blonde woman, holds him gently and introduces herself with a warm smile. Looking past her, he sees a man and gets a strange feeling he's seen that face somewhere before. When the man pinches his cheek, it all clicks into place, and the baby finally remembers who he is. In his mind, the image of the mysterious man sharpens into perfect clarity. This was Duke Saxon, the most powerful necromancer and dark mage on the entire continent. If that man is his father, this can only be the heart of forbidden magic. The Black Tower. The reincarnation stone he'd hidden had worked, but his new body had been left entirely to chance. Amazingly, he was reborn as the eldest son of the prestigious ducal family Saxon. The MC realizes he was born with a silver spoon this time and grins with pure satisfaction. Immediately, he begins plotting to master the art of necromancy as soon as he's old enough. With that power, he will obliterate every single one of the scoundrels in the Empire who betrayed him. Duke Saxon and his wife find it odd that their newborn son hasn't cried at all. Worried, his mother asks the nanny to check on the baby, remarking on how quiet he is. In his thoughts, the MC notes that he's not really a child, so tears don't come easily. Holding the infant, the nanny reports that his breathing is stable and there's no cause for concern. His father wonders aloud if a tearless child is a bad omen, but the nanny has an idea. With a smile, she suggests that if they want him to cry, a little smack should do the trick, and she taps him. The protagonist seethes internally, but as a baby, he's powerless to curse the old woman out. His parents are amused by their son's stubbornness, commenting on his strong will. Deciding to give it a try, his mother picks him up, all while the baby internally calls them idiots. The Duchess raises her hand to pat her son, who eyes her with deep suspicion. Realizing he's about to get hit again, the little hero silently curses his helpless situation. But instead of a slap, she gives him a series of gentle, loving pats. Surprised by the unexpected sensation, the boy falls silent for a moment. The instant the warmth of her gentle hand touched his skin, a memory flooded his mind. Suddenly, Han-sung was transported back to his past life, filled with endless battles and solitude. He tried to remember the last time he felt warmth amidst so much suffering. In his previous life, he had always been alone, surrounded by nothing but distrust and betrayal. The soft touch of his new mother's hand radiated a love he hadn't experienced in years. At that moment, Han-sung, who hadn't shed a tear for as long as he could remember, felt his emotions surge. A loud, genuine cry finally echoed through the room, taking his new parents by complete surprise. 8 years flew by and Dale's parents stood in his room, commenting on how quickly time had passed. His mother asks if he's still in the study, remarking that he certainly takes after his father. A satisfied smile on his face, her husband Alan notes the boy's clear fascination with magic. His wife's expression turns serious as she reminds him of the promise they made long ago. The promise was that Alan would never teach their son necromancy, a vow made while Dale was studying in the library. She's relieved that her husband remembers their agreement, which he confirms he does. Alan reassures her, saying the birthday gift he has for Dale tomorrow will resolve everything. Their conversation is cut short by a sudden knock at the door, and he wonders who it could be. A maid bursts into the room, looking frantic as she calls out for her master. She reports that something has happened to young Master Dale, sending his parents into a panic. Worried, they dash to the study to find their son on the floor, enveloped in swirling energy. Caught in a vortex of mana, the terrified boy calls out to his parents. His mother rushes to embrace him, asking if he's alright, and Dale assures her he isn't hurt. Meanwhile, his father hangs back, sensing an immense amount of mana lingering in the air. Alan was stunned. At just 8 years old, the boy could already manifest mana all by himself. With an intimidating glare, the father asks if Dale was the one who released the mana, and the MC realizes he messed up. The boy hadn't expected to unleash his mana so soon and now had no idea how to answer his father. But to his astonishment, Duke Saxon simply broke into a grin of pure, unadulterated pride. He lovingly ruffles his son's hair, saying this was to be expected, though he regrets not being able to teach him. Dale is floored. If he can't learn necromancy, how will he ever get his revenge? His mother tells him to head back to his room, and the boy agrees with a smile. As he leaves, Dale glances back to see his father, Alan, calling his mother by her name, Alina. With a sly smile, Duke Alan tells his wife he's already figured out the perfect gift for their son. A short while later, at the boy's birthday banquet, the hall is filled with gathered nobles. Various guests chat amongst themselves, wondering when the young master will finally make his appearance. From the second floor, the protagonist observes the party, looking rather bored by all the fanfare. He feels drained, knowing all these people are here simply to celebrate his birthday. For the MC, being treated as a nobleman's son still feels bizarre after the life he once lived. His mind keeps drifting back to the incident in the library the day before, when his mana erupted. Just recalling his past life had caused his mana to spiral out of control. It felt like a waste not to pursue necromancy. The boy wonders how to convince his father, remembering something about a special gift. His train of thought is broken when his mother calls to him, apologizing for the long wait. The Duchess wishes Dale a happy 8th birthday, a cloaked figure standing silently beside her. Curious, the boy asks about the mysterious person behind her, and his mother makes the introduction. Slowly, the cloaked figure reveals their face to the young master of the Saxon family. It is Sephia, an elder elf from the Blue Magic Tower and a renowned master of water magic. This stunning elf is to be his new teacher, and she expresses her excitement to begin working with him. Stunned, the protagonist realizes an elder from the Blue Magic Tower will be his master. This means he'll be learning water magic, confirming his suspicion that his mother wants him far away from the dark arts. His new teacher, Sephia, requests a private word with Dale, and the boy agrees to follow her. In a snow-swept clearing, the elf states that, as he likely knows, she is only permitted to teach him water magic. She then asks if he's disappointed, sensing that his heart is set on learning something else. Surprised, Dale questions how she knew, and Sephia replies that his desire to learn necromancy is obvious. The elf explains that the conditions of his parents' marriage are common knowledge throughout the Empire. A flashback reveals that when Duke Alan courted Lady Alina, she was fearful of his infamous reputation. To win her over, the Duke promised to never pass down his dark arts to any of their children. Sephia admits this vow makes learning dark magic tricky, but she is confident she can persuade Alina. With a self-assured smile, the new teacher asks if the protagonist is willing to follow her lead. The boy counters, asking if she, an elf, doesn't find dark magic and necromancy distasteful. Finding his question amusing, the master lets out a small chuckle before she answers. Dale argues that priests who bring the dying back to life are also defying the natural order. In the MC's eyes, necromancy and resurrection are two sides of the same coin, and he decides Sephia is a worthy teacher. With that settled, the elf begins the lesson, stating his first goal is to complete his first mana circle. The boy is thrilled. Most spells he's read about require at least one circle of mana to cast. His teacher instructs him to place a hand over his heart and focus his mind, an order he immediately follows. Closing his eyes, the protagonist reflects on how different this world is from Earth. This place is saturated with mana, but unless you're a dragon, handling it directly is impossible. To control this power, one needs a filter known as the heart's mana circle. His task is to gather the scattered fragments of the circle around his heart and set them spinning. Understanding the concept, the protagonist focuses and a powerful blue light radiates from his body. His teacher then guides him to carefully start rotating the mana around his heart. She also warns that this process typically takes a month, so he shouldn't try to rush it. However, the protagonist cuts her off, announcing he's already done it, leaving the elf speechless. Utterly astonished and disbelieving, his teacher is frozen in shock. She can hardly process it. He barely began his training, and yet formed a circle in mere minutes. Sephia begins to wonder if the boy is a once-in-a-generation magical prodigy. Deeply impressed, the master asks Dale if he can now channel mana through the newly formed circle. The MC says he'll give it a shot and concentrates, preparing to release the energy building inside him. For a novice, simply channeling mana through the circle is an incredibly difficult feat. He recalls that in his past life, his only magic consisted of destruction spells carved directly onto his body. But now, having inherited his father's talent, his new body accepts mana as if it were second nature. Focusing his will, he draws the mana to his fingertips, molding it into a potent spell. His objective is to forge the sharpest possible shard, one that will one day pierce the Empire's throat. A perfectly formed, intensely glowing ice crystal materializes in the palm of his hand. The elf is shocked. The mana should have dissipated, yet he crystallized it into a focused beam of ice. Dale mentions he prioritized its form so its power might be lacking, before launching the spell at a nearby tree. His master can only watch as the ice ray streaks toward its target at incredible speed. Upon impact, the spell erupts with a force far beyond what a beginner should be capable of. The blast is so powerful that the tree is completely obliterated, shattering into countless pieces. Witnessing this level of destruction, his teacher is left utterly speechless by her student's raw talent. She's stunned that the spell pierced the thick wood with a precision that should be impossible for a child. As Dale offers an innocent smile, the elf silently wonders who in the world this boy truly is. Analyzing the splintered tree stump, the teacher reflects on what she just witnessed. She had expected him to simply move the mana, but he instead harnessed the ambient cold to craft a perfect spell. Noticing his master's silence, the protagonist asks if he might have done something wrong. An enigmatic smile crosses the elf's face as she turns to her student, but she remains silent. The complexity of that magical formula was far beyond anything a child should be able to create. The spell incorporated 3 distinct formulas, known as the golden ratio of military magic. It was a flawlessly lethal spell that demanded an extraordinary level of mana control. The fact that he could design and cast such a thing on his first try is frankly terrifying. The teacher dismisses it as nothing, adding that she now understands why Lord Noir would find his situation a shame. Back in the study, the Duke demands to know why Sephia can no longer teach his son. Alan insists that she must continue, but the elf begins to recount what actually occurred. She reveals that the moment the boy completed his first circle, he cast a perfect, lethal-grade spell. It was almost unbelievable that an 8-year-old had so flawlessly executed a military magic formula. From this, the master concludes that young Lord Dale possesses a natural, innate talent for killing. His father asks if her non-violent elven principles prevent her from teaching such a boy. A small smile plays on her lips as the elf denies this, stating that's not the issue at all. On the contrary, she feels a powerful urge to personally guide this boy onto the correct path. Alan argues there's no reason for her to refuse, to which she adds that the boy has clearly inherited the Lord's Noir magic. A single bead of sweat forms on the Duke's brow as he realizes his son already has the magic he longs to learn. Professor Sephia says she's heard much of their love story and deeply respects their promise. However, she asserts that this doesn't give them the right to dictate the boy's future, not with talent like his. Outside, the protagonist strains to hear their conversation, but the room is soundproof. He sits slumped in the hallway, wondering if they're discussing him right now. The boy recalls not expecting his first spell to be so potent, and how shocked his master had been. With a sigh, the MC resolves to be more careful in controlling his power from this point forward. A voice suddenly calls his name, and the small boy looks up to see who it is. A wide grin spreads across his face as he jumps to his feet to greet the person. It was his Uncle Helmet, a knight in full plate armor, asking what he was doing just sitting there. The boy explains that his uncle has been away, to which Helmet replies he was fulfilling his duty to the family. The knight scoops him into his arms, a gesture of affection that surprises the protagonist. Dale returns the hug as his uncle tells him he's been off defeating fearsome monsters. A clever smile appears on the boy's face as he correctly guesses Helmet was in the dungeon, which he confirms. The appearance of dungeons and the subsequent monster overflows are a grave concern for any territory. Ever since the Demon King's era, monsters have continuously invaded civilian areas, causing immense damage. For this reason, knights are dedicated to clearing dungeons and eliminating any monsters that escape. The situation in the Duchy of Saxon is even more dire than in other territories. The reason for this dates back to when the hero defeated the Demon King, and Duke Saxon was given an order. He was tasked with converting the Demon King's former territory to Imperial land, a task the MC calls dumping the leftovers. The protagonist urges his uncle to be careful, and Helmet asks if the young lord is worried about him. Suddenly, Duke Saxon appears, remarking that Helmet seems to be in good health, and the knight greets him formally. With a slight smile, the Duke commends the knight for his hard work during the recent dungeon expedition. A moment later, Duchess Alina enters the room, and the MC wonders what his mother is doing there. Beaming with pride, his mother calls out to her son Dale, showering him with praise. She embraces him tightly, saying she heard he achieved his first circle and that she couldn't be prouder. His father adds his congratulations and tells the boy he can ask for anything he desires. The MC pauses to think asking to learn necromancy right now might seem too cunning for a child. So, with an innocent smile, the boy declares he wants a little sister, leaving his parents completely flustered. The Duke stammers that they will certainly try their best, to which the boy enthusiastically replies, "Okay." Watching the scene unfold, Uncle Helmet can't help but burst into laughter at the amusing situation. Later that night, Dale yawns in his room, finding it exhausting to constantly act like a child. He feels a deep weariness, likely a side effect of using magic for the first time in his new life. Suddenly, the boy is jolted awake by a nightmare, his eyes flying open in sheer terror. In his dream, he was reliving his final moments, betrayed and struck down by Count Brandenburg. The traitor's voice mocked him for growing soft, taunting him about any lingering thoughts of revenge. With a cruel sneer, the Count vowed that the Empire would hunt him down and erase his very existence. The nightmare ends abruptly, and the protagonist wakes with a start, mana violently erupting from his body. As mana explodes from him, the boy feels as though his heart is about to burst from the strain. The uncontrollable energy floods the room, and he wonders if he's experiencing a mana surge. Furious, the protagonist curses the Empire for tormenting him even in his dreams. He stumbles outside for fresh air, hoping to calm himself, but the situation only seems to worsen. The pain in his chest intensifies, and the MC feels the control over his magic slipping away completely. But then, his teacher Cephia appears, calmly remarking that he seems to be in a difficult spot. The elf instantly recognizes the mana surge. While she knows he's talented, she can't help but sense the danger. Seeing the boy Zaguni, the master approaches and places a calming hand over his chest. She fears that if malice ever takes root in Dale's magic, his path will become irreversible. Channeling her own power, the teacher begins to soothe her students out of control energy. The protagonist is amazed. The mana surge vanished completely the moment she touched him. His master calls his name and the boy, still dazed, responds immediately. The elf explains that the essence of magic is a mirror to the heart, which is why every mage's power is unique. She declares that his talent lies in taking lives, making it an exceptionally dangerous gift. For that very reason, she believes she is the perfect person to teach him and hands him a mysterious book. Taking the book, the MC instantly recognizes it as a tome on the art of necromancy. A gentle smile graces her lips as the master suggests that perhaps it is destiny for her to guide him from now on. Deeply moved, the protagonist looks at her, silently wishing himself a happy birthday. In a sudden burst of emotion, the boy hugs her, and his teacher playfully teases him for being so needy. A few days later, they stand outside, and the boy asks if they're going rabbit hunting. His teacher confirms with a smile as a white rabbit hops into view in the snow ahead. The master tells him to recall the times he went hunting with his father, and the boy nods in agreement. The small animal stares directly at them as the protagonist readies his spell. With a look of intense focus, Dale forms a magic circle, concentrating his energy for the strike. The ice ray shoots out, hitting the rabbit dead on and taking it down with a single, perfect shot. The elf observes the scene, noting that even when taking a life, her student's hands show no hesitation. She then explains that while the spell is the same, its form differs from one mage to the next. The teacher asks if the boy knows the reason, but the MC admits he has absolutely no idea. With a knowing smile, the master reveals that magic is a mirror of the mind, a reflection of one's inner self. The protagonist listens intently, feeling like he's starting to grasp the deeper mechanics of magic. Cephia continues explaining that terms like wall of fire are merely solidified mental images. The red magic tower, she elaborates values ordered through overwhelming force, and their magic reflects this philosophy. In contrast, her own blue magic tower champions order through harmony and balance. Each magic tower's core philosophy is projected into the very form of their magic, becoming its foundational system. The Noir white and green towers also exist, each with its own unique approach and philosophy. A smile touches her lips as the master admits this is probably too advanced a topic for him right now. She then explains that the most fundamental form of necromancy is raising a zombie, gesturing towards the rabbit. The boy demonstrates the art of animating a corpse, using mana strings to control it like a marionette. With expert precision, the MC manipulates the strings, making the zombie rabbit move to his will. The mana strings, connected to its head, spine, and knees, grant him precise control over its movements. The zombie rabbit turns with a sinister glare, and his master commends him on a job well done. The elf then asks if he's ready for the next step, and the boy confidently agrees. With a glint of excitement in his eyes, the MC casts a frost armor spell on the zombie rabbit. A brilliant blue light radiates from the ground as ice crystals rapidly form around the creature. The armor of ice encases the rabbit's entire body, transforming it into a crystalline beast. His teacher remarks that the armor's execution was decent and its form is quite fitting. A challenging smile appears on her face as the master crafts a spell of her own, stating she'll test the armor's defense. The protagonist feels a twinge of nervousness as he watches his teacher prepare to attack his creation. The elf unleashes a powerful blast of energy that slams into the zombie rabbit with its full force. The ice armor cracks under the immense pressure but miraculously holds, withstanding the teacher's assault. A victorious grin spreads across the boy's face as he celebrates successfully blocking his master's attack. The elf praises his excellent work and the MC approaches her, his expression confident. Sensing he has something to say, the teacher asks if there's anything he'd like to request from her. A clever smile on his face, Dale says he'd like her to teach him how to better utilize water magic. The master smiles, appearing pleased with her student's request, but her response is completely unexpected. With a simple firm no, she denies the boy's request, leaving him shocked and utterly confused. The teacher explains that what he performed was a very basic form of water magic, and he still has a long way to go. Like all magic, the water attribute demands deeper insight and higher levels of understanding to master. For most beginners, even learning a single type of magic is an immense challenge. Anyone capable of wielding two types simultaneously is revered as a dual mage. The master states that for someone his age, achieving this is nearly impossible and seems overly ambitious. With a wicked grin, the boy questions her use of the word ambition, and the elf eyes him suspiciously. The MC wonders if after everything he's demonstrated, she still believes it's not enough. With an innocent look, he reminds her of her own words, that they would find the path forward together. Slightly flustered by his comeback, the teacher abruptly ends the lesson for the day. That very night, the protagonist heads to the study, a tall stack of books in his arms. Determined, the boy declares there's nothing he can't accomplish on his own and settles into study. He's resolved to prove his worth, leaving her no choice but to teach him necromancy. As he studies late into the night, a mysterious voice begins to call his name. The next morning, his master asks if he's feeling all right, and he explains he stayed up late preparing. The elf advises him not to push himself too hard, and the boy agrees with a confident smile. Then the MC forms a magic circle and a dark energy starts to swirl from his hands. He channels his power into the zombie rabbit, which is now clad in spiky ice armor. A smirk plays on the teacher's lips as she comments on his complete mastery of the technique. Suddenly, the spikes on the rabbit's ice armor begin to glow with an intense light. In the next instant, the spikes detonate, scattering in every direction like razor-sharp shrapnel. Stunned, the master wonders if that was an ice explosion as smoke billows from the rabbit's remains. But the surprises aren't over. The undead creature begins to concentrate a dark, volatile energy. The zombie rabbit then forms a sphere of dark energy, readying a new kind of attack. With a swift motion, the creature launches the energy sphere with devastating force. The combination of attacks results in a massive explosion of dark energy and jagged ice shards. Shocked by the sheer power of the assault, Professor Sifia erects a protective barrier around herself. The hexagonal shield deflects the sharp fragments that fly toward her like a storm of blades. The elf is left speechless, deeply impressed by the ingenuity and power of her young student. The MC explains how he fused the attributes of water and darkness into a single, devastating attack. A confident smile on his face, he asks if this qualifies him as a dual mage. His master surveys the path of destruction, admitting she's never seen an attack method quite like it. The corpse explosion combined with the ice armor resulted in a much wider area of effect. Shards of ice and bone were simultaneously launched like sharp projectiles in all directions. The teacher kneels down, picking up an ice fragment, pondering the nature of this magic. She thinks to herself that this is a spell only someone who has dedicated their life to the battlefield would devise. The master wonders what kind of mental landscape such a young boy could possibly possess. Suddenly, the protagonist turns with a curious expression, surprising his teacher. He calls out to his uncle Helmut, who approaches with his knights on horseback. His uncle greets them, and the MC asks if they've just returned from another dungeon raid. Helmut replies that this time they were just subduing a small group of monsters on the road. The Black Cavalry of the Duchy of Saxon worked tirelessly to maintain peace throughout the territory. They are the peerless cavalry of the duchy, wielding lances wreathed in powerful aura. To top it all off, their captain Sir Helmut is one of the 7 esteemed sword masters of the continent. With his gleaming sword and potent aura, Helmut is a respected and legendary figure. With an adorable smile, the protagonist reminds his uncle of his promise to teach him swordsmanship. The knight laughs, assuring him he hasn't forgotten, and the boy bids him an excited farewell. Helmut advises him not to stay out in the cold too long, and the MC wishes him a safe journey back. After his uncle departs, Professor Sifia suggests they should also head back, and the boy agrees. That same evening, the elf meets with Dale's parents, where the Duchess has some questions for her. The master reveals that young Dale has achieved his first circle in both necromancy and water magic. Surprised, the Duke reminds her they had requested she only teach the boy water magic. The teacher explains that as his mentor, she felt compelled to teach him what he truly wanted to learn. Sophia clarifies that young Dale's desire to learn went beyond just water magic, and she chose to support him. The Duchess then rises and with a serious expression, makes an unexpected request of the teacher. She asks that Sophia continue to teach her son water magic, as this is her personal wish. The elf agrees to keep looking after the boy, and the Duchess thanks her with a relieved smile. With that, the teacher stands to excuse herself from the meeting with Dale's parents. Before she leaves, Sophia offers a sincere apology for having broken her promise to Lord Noir. After the master's departure, the Duchess remarks on how extraordinary their son is to be a dual mage. The Duke admits that while the boy sometimes frightens him, he must be capable, for he is their son. A determined look crosses Alan's face as he turns to his wife, Alina, and makes a startling declaration. He announces his desire to teach their son necromancy, thereby breaking the promise he made to her. Alan explains he wants to give him the strength to bear a lord's duties and to finally have a disciple. With his face buried in his hands, the Duke apologizes to his wife for having to break his vow. A worried expression on her face, the Duchess notes that public opinion on necromancy is still very negative. She says she had wanted to dissuade him for that reason, but seeing their son's determination has changed her mind. With a gentle smile, Alina embraces him, telling him to train their son to become a great necromancer. In a tender moment, she holds him close. The Duke seems surprised but accepts her decision. Alan returns the embrace, swearing he will train their son to be the very best. And so, the boy's first day of specialized necromancy training finally commenced. However, his father immediately reprimanded him, expressing deep disappointment in his son's lack of knowledge. The boy defends himself, stating he only knew what his master had taught him and couldn't do more. The moment he demonstrated the basics of necromancy, his father had whisked him away to the castle's magic workshop. The Duke sternly informs him that as long as he is the teacher, such basic spells are forbidden. The boy's first assignment is to memorize the bone and muscle structures of every known life form. Facing towering piles of books, the protagonist agrees with a somewhat disheartened expression. He then throws himself into memorizing every word of tomes that, in his world, only medical students would read. After he masters the fundamentals, his father presents him with a new book, permitting him to move on to practical magic. A small smile plays on the Duke's lips as he declares the real lesson starts now, and the boy nods in agreement. But as he looks at the practice table, the MC is taken aback by what lies before him. A goblin's corpse was laid out on the table, and the boy questions why it's there. His father notes his perplexed expression and begins to explain the importance of understanding anatomy. An unskilled sorcerer can only make a master swordsman move like a clumsy, simple zombie. For his first practical test, his father challenges him to animate the undead soldier before him. The protagonist concentrates and a dark aura begins to swirl around the goblin corpse. He thinks that, unlike a rabbit, a goblin is bipedal, making it far more complex to control. It feels like trying to operate an intricate marionette with dozens of mana strings all at once. The boy realizes its joints and muscles have stiffened, preventing him from moving them properly. Concerned, the MC wonders how he's supposed to overcome this challenge. His father then calls to him, explaining that while stiffening the body is a good idea, it has a major flaw. The unavoidable side effect is that it severely restricts the corpse's movement, rendering it nearly useless in combat. With an intense gaze, the Duke tells his son to simply watch and learn from his example. Channeling his own power, Alan unleashes a wave of dark energy that envelops the goblin's body. The boy is stunned as he watches what his father is doing to the corpse before him. The goblin zombie begins to twist and contort, transforming into something entirely new and terrifying. The Duke explains that rib cages are designed to protect internal organs. However, since the undead have no organs to protect, there's no reason to maintain that structure. In a swift motion, the goblin's ribs jet outwards, morphing into sharp, deadly blades. His father then states that the key is to understand a target's structure and reshape it to fit your needs. The protagonist is left in awe by his father's incredible display of power and skill. Alan reveals that this is the very foundation of dark magic, the true power of a necromancer. With a look of sheer determination, Dale turns to his father and makes a request with all his conviction. The boy asks the Duke to teach him the core philosophy of the Noir Magic Tower. A slight smile on his lips, the father seems pleased by his son's ambition and resolve. With a confident smirk, Duke Saxon prepares to unveil the philosophy of his magic tower. He explains that truth is always found within the embrace of death, the cornerstone of their belief system. A serious expression on his face, the father states that to grasp this truth, they must first understand the weight of life. Hearing his father's words, the protagonist is hit with a flashback to his past life as a hero. He remembers a man begging for his life, surrounded by a raging inferno of destruction. The man had called him a hero and pleaded to be spared, but the protagonist had raised his sword. In a final, desperate moment, the man clasped his hands, begging not to be taken out. But the hero's blade fell without a hint of hesitation, and he vividly remembers the sensation of that moment. Back in the present, his father calls his name, asking if he's all right, noting he looks unwell. The boy remains silent for a moment, still reeling from the powerful memory of his past life. With a somber expression, he assures his father he's fine and that there's no need to worry. As Dale's magical training advanced, news that he was learning the dark arts began to spread. Duke Saxon's breaking of his vow sent shockwaves through the empire and its nobility, and the person who had prompted this broken vow became the subject of intense scrutiny from everyone, including the nobles. All eyes in the empire were now on him, curious to see what the young heir of House Saxon would do next. Thrust into the spotlight, the boy became the center of both attention and rampant gossip. Several weeks later, at the duchy's training grounds, Dale spars with his uncle. Wielding a wooden sword, the boy masterfully parries the attacks of his uncle Helmut. With every exchange, the protagonist demonstrates a level of skill astonishing for his age. He blocks a powerful strike from his uncle with perfect precision and strength, impressing the sword master. A small smile on his face, Helmut channels his aura into the wooden sword to block the counterattack. The protagonist then deftly dodges a swing and prepares to retaliate with a swift maneuver. He spins his body, using the centrifugal force to launch a powerful strike at his uncle. The boy braces for impact, but his uncle manages to evade the blow at the very last second. In a quick, athletic move, Dale leaps into the air, bringing his sword down in an overhead strike. His uncle is surprised by the boy's skill, but still manages to block the attack with ease. In the middle of their exchange, Helmut deliberately lets his wooden sword fall to the ground. With a victorious grin, the knight praises his nephew, telling him he wasn't half bad. But the MC knows there's no way a knight of his uncle's caliber would drop his sword by accident. He accuses his uncle of dropping it on purpose, which the knight denies with a playful smile. The boy says his uncle's swordsmanship is so superb that he almost regrets being a mage. The knight takes the boy's hand, telling him there's no need for him to train so rigorously. He explains that mages are always protected in battle by an escort of dedicated knights. A concerned look crosses Helmut's face as he insists there's no need to push himself to the point of injury. However, the protagonist replies that there's a very good reason for his intense training, showing his bandaged hand. With a confident smile, the MC declares it wouldn't be right for the Duke's son to rely solely on guards. Besides, he couldn't pass up the opportunity to learn directly from one of the 7 great sword masters. His uncle laughs at the response, praising his nephew's fierce determination and ambition. A satisfied grin spreads across the boy's face, thrilled to have finally earned a compliment from his uncle. Suddenly, Duchess Alina appears, remarking that the two of them seem to be in high spirits. The boy asks what brings her to the training grounds, and she says she wanted to see how hard he was working. The Duchess reveals she has some news and asks if he remembers the gift he requested. The MC racks his brain, trying to recall what he had asked for, but the memory is hazy. A flashback shows the moment he asked his parents for a little sister. As the memory returns, the protagonist is left stunned and speechless by his mother's implication. Beaming with joy, Elena tells him he'll need to take very good care of his new little brother or sister. Grinning from ear to ear, the boy promises he will and that he'll be the best big brother ever. 10 months later, the family is gathered in a room with the MC utterly captivated by his new baby sister. He gently touches the baby's cheek, saying it still feels surreal that she's really his sister. A look of pure adoration on his face, the protagonist remarks that his little sister is unbelievably cute. His father then asks if he'd like to hold the baby, making the boy both surprised and nervous. His mother encourages him, assuring him it's not that difficult, before placing the small infant in his arms. Carefully, the MC holds her, realizing it wasn't nearly as hard as he had imagined. The Duchess comments that the baby looks just like him, and mentions that she always cries when she holds her. But in her brother's arms, the little one seems perfectly happy, smiling with pure innocence. With a gentle expression, the protagonist holds his baby sister, feeling an instant special bond. His father asks how it feels, and the boy replies that she's as light as a feather. Yet at the same time, he says she feels heavy, a response that brings a smile to the Duke's face. With a wise look, Alan reveals that what he's feeling is the weight of a life, and that he should never forget it. His mother then reminds him of his lesson with Master Cephia, encouraging him to go and meet her. A smile on her face, Master Cephia announces that the day's lesson will be a real combat drill. The protagonist asks if he can go all out, and she encourages him to attack with his full strength. A look of determination in his eyes, the boy forms a magic circle and braces for combat. His teacher also prepares herself, stating she's eager to see how much her student has improved. The MC launches an ice ray at his master, who simply watches the attack approach, unmoving. In a fluid motion, the elf shatters the ice ray with her bare hands, calling the attack too slow. A challenging smile plays on Cephia's lips as she declares she won't tolerate a student holding back on their master. She then unleashes her own attack, an ice ray far larger and more powerful than Dale's. The teacher warns him to raise a barrier quickly, and the boy is momentarily stunned by her power. In the blink of an eye, the protagonist conjures a hexagonal barrier to shield himself from the assault. The ice ray slams into the barrier, and the sheer force of the impact sends the MC flying backward. He realizes that if he hadn't blocked that attack, he would have been seriously injured. His master compliments him on being able to form an ice armor shield so quickly. With a determined expression, the boy gets back on his feet, ready for the next round. A giant ice golem materializes before them, and the elf challenges him to attack her again. The protagonist responds by weaving a combination of formulas to erect a massive wall of ice. His teacher is taken aback by the boy's ability to cast such a complex spell on the fly. She wonders how he managed to conjure a defensive ice wall in the heat of battle. The master realizes he's dramatically increased the ice's density, making the wall incredibly durable. With that, she finds herself facing a colossal wall of ice, crafted by her own talented student. His master touches the ice wall, questioning why he would use a defensive spell at this juncture. She assumes he needs a moment to recover from her last attack, but quickly realizes her mistake. A confused expression on her face, the elf senses a strange energy emanating from the ice wall. Suddenly, formulas for ice explosion and fragmentation etch themselves across the wall's surface. With a determined gaze, the protagonist utters the single word, detonate, and the wall begins to glow ominously. The master turns to face the imminent explosion, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. She recognizes the sheer ingenuity of her student's attack, impressed by his creativity. The ice wall detonates in a shower of razor-sharp shards, acting like a massive fragmentation grenade. The boy celebrates his strategy's success, watching the result of his devastating attack. He explains that by further condensing the ice wall, he was able to use it to create a powerful explosion. A confident smile on his face, the MC says it'll be difficult for her to dodge this attack and peers into the smoke. But as he looks closer, the protagonist is shocked to see his master is no longer there. He cries out her name in panic, his mind flashing with an image of his teacher being caught in the blast. With a calm smile, the real Sifi appears at his side, asking if he called for her. Overcome with relief, the boy realizes the image he saw was merely an illusion created by his master. A smile on her face, the elf praises her student's impressive technique, congratulating him on the achievement. She admits she never imagined a first circle mage could be capable of injuring a tower elder. The protagonist apologizes profusely, insisting he never meant to actually harm her during training. But his master reassures him, saying she is grateful for the small wound he inflicted that day. She explains with a gentle smile that it proves he trusted her enough to use his full, unbridled strength. With a warm smile, the master says that as his teacher, her pride swells beyond what words can describe. The elf affectionately pats the boy's head and asks how he managed to devise such a spell formula. The MC replies with a grin that it was all thanks to her teachings, which brings a smile to her face. Back at the castle, Duke Saxon calls out to the master, and she turns to him with a serious expression. He asks about the cut on her cheek, and the elf explains it was just a training accident. With a look of sincere gratitude, the Duke thanks Sifia for everything she's done for his son. The teacher says it's a pleasure to instruct such a gifted student, prompting the father to make another request. The elf smiles and tells him to go ahead, and the Duke begins to explain the situation. He reveals that a band of orcs has crossed the mountain range, invading their territory. With a grave expression, the father announces his intention to send Dale into the battle, shocking the master. The teacher argues that the young master is still far from ready for actual combat, but the Duke reassures her, clarifying that he won't be fighting on the front lines. He explains that defending their territory is the duty of House Saxon, and as heir, Dale must understand this. A dark aura surrounds the father as he states that his son is no exception to this solemn responsibility. A worried look on her face, the master asks what the Duke needs her to do to assist. He reveals he will entrust his personal artifact to Dale and wants her to guide him until he masters it. Sifi immediately recalls that an artifact is an object possessing immense power and a will of its own. To wield one, the user must offer their mana, or even their very life force as payment for its power. The stronger the artifact, the more dangerous and uncontrollable it becomes, often proving fatal to the unworthy. House Saxon has long mastered the art of handling these powers, and now it is Dale's turn to learn. The Duke declares that as his heir, Dale must prepare himself for the impending battle. Thrilled by the news, the boy celebrates. He's finally getting a chance to fight for real. His father confirms he will join the subjugation force tasked with exterminating the orc horde. But before that, the Duke states he must learn to control the family's ancient, dark power. They enter a vault filled with artifacts, and his father tells him he must master this power. The protagonist is awestruck by the sheer number of powerful artifacts gathered in one place. The Duke reveals that these are artifacts once belonging to the Demon King, acquired when they conquered his domain. The boy can feel the intense mana radiating from each and every one of the artifacts. Alan sternly warns him not to touch anything until he learns to control the power of these items. Suddenly, the Duke calls for his son, only to realize the boy has vanished from sight. A wave of concern washes over the father as he wonders where his impulsive son could have run off to. A moment earlier, the MC had been searching for an artifact that felt right for him. He examines various shields and rings, but none of them seem to be what he's looking for. Suddenly, a mysterious voice from a shield calls to him, saying it senses his hatred and thirst for vengeance. The shield urges him to choose it, promising they can slaughter his enemies and achieve new heights of power together. The protagonist realizes the dark artifacts are resonating with his deep-seated resentment. But he knows this isn't enough for his revenge. He needs something far, far stronger. Abruptly, the boy spots a black cloak that wasn't there a moment ago and moves closer to inspect it. He wonders if it could possibly be a cloak of shadows, a legendary and incredibly powerful artifact. This cloak was once worn by Duke Berta of the Demon King's army and could give physical form to shadows. Thrilled by his discovery, the boy decides to try on the cloak immediately to test its powers. But his father's angry voice calls out, reprimanding him for his recklessness and disobedience. A shadow erupts from the cloak, wrapping around the protagonist's body and dragging him into darkness. In a dark, empty void, the cloak begins to whisper inside his mind, complaining of its hunger. The MC understands this is no ordinary shadow. The challenge of controlling it will be immense. A flashback shows the cloak's previous owners summoning shadow storms and commanding the darkness. To truly master the artifact, the new host must force the shadow creature within to submit to his will. A confident smile on his face, the protagonist prepares to confront the creature and tame its power. He knows the creature won't yield easily and steels himself for a fierce battle of wills. The shadow creature then manifests as a threatening, swirling mass of dark energy. Outside, the Duke and Professor Sephia watch the sphere of darkness with growing concern. The father fears that if the boy continues, he'll lose his sanity and be consumed by the creature. The master begins to panic, and the Duke decides they must pull him out, by force if necessary. But before they can intervene, the sphere of darkness dissipates, and the protagonist emerges completely unharmed. His father calls his name, and the boy responds with a calm smile and a look of confidence. The teacher rushes to his side, asking if he's alright, and the MC reassures her that he feels great. With a playful grin, he says it felt like just a little prickin', and that there's nothing to worry about. His master is stunned, wondering how a mere child could withstand such a potent artifact. She simply can't comprehend how he survived an ordeal that should have been fatal. The boy then turns to his father with a question, and the Duke encourages him to ask. With an innocent smile, the boy asks if he can try out the other artifacts as well. The Duke and Professor Sephia are left utterly shocked and speechless by the boy's audacious request. A few days later on the training grounds, Uncle Helmut is surprised to see him wearing the Cloak of Shadows. The MC confirms with a smile that he is indeed wearing the legendary cloak, and his uncle looks on with concern. Helmut warns him that the artifact is notoriously difficult to control, but the boy insists he's fine. The knight finds it fascinating that his nephew can handle such a dangerous artifact with such apparent ease. The protagonist explains that the shadow creature latched onto him the moment it saw him, guessing it must have been lonely. With a grin, the MC suggests the creature probably just wanted a friend, and the shadow itself seems to smile. His uncle laughs at his nephew's innocence, remarking that he's too kind for his own good. A determined look on his face, Dale thanks his uncle, and the shadow follows him like a loyal pet. The boy then says he has a request, and the knight asks what he desires. The MC asks for a real sparring match as combat practice, and his uncle agrees with excitement. Sword in hand, Helmut readies himself for the fight, and the protagonist vows not to disappoint him. However, the boy realizes that facing one of the 7 great sword masters might be more than he can handle. To ease his worries, his uncle promises to use only basic swordsmanship, without any aura enhancement. The protagonist briefly wonders if his uncle will go easy on him, but quickly dismisses the thought. He knows a true knight must always fight with sincerity. It's his uncle's personal creed. The MC's true goal for this spar isn't the duel itself, but rather to practice wielding the cloak's power. The strength of the weapons he can form from the shadow creatures will determine the artifact's true worth. For that purpose, this battle serves as a necessary test to gauge his newfound abilities. In a blur of motion, Helmut unleashes a powerful strike that protagonist barely manages to block. The uncle presses his attack, and shadow blades try to intercept him, but he cleaves right through them. The MC is shocked. His uncle shattered the attack with sheer physical strength without using any aura. A small smile on his face, the knight compliments his nephew and advances to continue the fight. Thrilled by the challenge, Helmut announces he's going to attack for real now, and the boy braces himself. The uncle leaps into the air, bringing his sword down with astonishing force. But the protagonist uses the shadows to evade, preparing a surprise counter-attack. The knight is impressed by his nephew's tactic, finding his ingenuity fascinating. Using the shadows to move with blinding speed, Dale appears behind his uncle ready to strike. But the sword master is quicker, blocking the blow with his sword and a confident smile. The impact of the blow is immense, and the MC feels the force of his uncle's strength reverberate through his arms. The boy is knocked backward but manages to recover his footing, preparing for the next exchange. The knight is impressed that his nephew was able to block such a powerful strike. The protagonist truly understands the power difference between a normal weapon and a top-tier artifact. Energized by the challenge, Helmut invites him for 10 more exchanges, and the duel rages on. That day, the knights who were watching murmured in disbelief at the boy's incredible skill. None of them had ever lasted more than 2 exchanges against Captain Helmut in a duel. They sensed an insurmountable wall between themselves and the young master of House Saxon. A few days later, on the day of deployment, Duchess Alina speaks with her son in private. She tells him that no matter how much she considers it, she cannot bear to let him go to such a dangerous place. A worried look on her face, the mother says she doesn't want to see him get hurt in the coming battle. The protagonist reassures her, explaining he must become stronger to one day shoulder the burden of the duchy. With a determined smile, he says that when the time comes, he'll need the strength to protect his family. With tears welling in his eyes, the boy pleads for his mother to allow him to become strong enough to protect her. Deeply moved by her son's words, the Duchess relents, giving him her blessing to go to battle. The MC mounts his horse and bids his mother farewell, promising a swift and safe return. In the early morning hours at their temporary base, the troops are assembled and ready to march. The Duke announces that all is prepared and asks his son to give the order to advance in his stead. The boy is taken aback, but his father explains that one day, the Black Cavalry will be his to command. With a solemn gaze, the Duke declares that these are Dale's knights, and he is their commander. The protagonist looks at the men before him, realizing they are his knights, and this is his first battle as their leader. A look of fierce determination in his eyes, he knows things will be different this time. he will not fail. Standing before his troops, the boy prepares to give the command to march and lead them to victory. With a powerful cry, he orders the proud swords of House Saxon to charge into battle. The knights respond with a thunderous war cry, ready to follow their young master into the fray. For this operation, 250 knights and an elite guard unit have been mobilized. Their target is a horde of approximately 1,000 orcs that has invaded the duchy's lands. The plan is to strike first by crossing the Saxon River and ambushing the orcs in their encampment. The Duke and his son survey the river, steeling themselves for the battle that is about to unfold. With their strategy in place, they advance toward the enemy camp to launch their surprise attack. The knights know that the only way to cross the wide river quickly is through the use of magic. Just then, Professor Cephia steps forward, announcing she will form an ice bridge for them. The protagonist is delighted to see his master, realizing she has come to lend her aid. With a graceful wave of her hands, the elf conjures a massive, solid ice bridge across the river. She tells him the way is clear, and the Duke thanks her for the assistance. The MC bids his master farewell and crosses the bridge with his father and the knights. The teacher watches the boy depart, thinking how strange it is to be so deeply concerned for a student. A small smile touches her lips as she realizes just how attached she's become to him, and how much he makes her worry. Moments later, at the orcs' temporary base, the ranger unit commences its attack. They unleash a volley of flaming arrows that rains down upon the unsuspecting enemy camp. The orcs are caught completely by surprise as their camp is engulfed in chaos and destruction. Amidst the fire and smoke, the orcs roar in pain and rage at the sudden, unexpected assault. Uncle Helmut then orders the cavalry battalions to form a wedge formation and charge. The knights surge forward in an attack formation, prepared to crush the enemy forces. The uncle asks his nephew for his assessment of the formation, and the boy analyzes the strategy. He calculates that the force of impact will be colossal, given the combined weight of knights in armor. With their lances locked and enhanced by aura, the formation is devastatingly lethal. The protagonist knows that not even the strongest orcs could hope to withstand such a charge. With a thunderous war cry, the cavalry charges into battle, poised for a decisive victory. The knights ride at full gallop, ready to shatter the horde of orcs that stands before them. The boy sees the battle is completely one-sided, and the Duke confirms the overwhelming power of his cavalry. However, Uncle Helmut warns him not to get complacent, as the real battle is only just beginning. The orcs rally, forming a line with shields and spears, as the cavalry charges in for a direct clash. The ambush was effective, but not enough to wipe out the entire orc horde in a single blow. The uncle then orders a tactical retreat so they can regroup and finish the job properly. A signal flare shoots into the sky, and the units begin to pull back according to the plan. The orcs are confused by the knights' sudden withdrawal and watch with suspicion. With angry grunts, the orcs prepare to give chase to the retreating knights. But the knights suddenly pivot and launch a devastating counter-attack, surprising the orcs yet again. The orcs attempt to defend with their spears, but one of the knights is struck down. The knight tumbles from his horse, and the protagonist observes the scene with a serious expression. A flicker of regret in his eyes, the MC notes that the knight's fall was an unfortunate turn of events. He wonders if his father and uncle already see him as a lost cause, to be left behind. The injured knight is now completely exposed, and orc closes in to deliver the final blow. The protagonist questions why his father and uncle are merely observing the scene from a distance. With looks of cold disapproval, they remain silent, making no move to help the fallen knight. The boy knows that chasing the orc on horseback would be too slow to save his comrade. He closes his eyes and focuses, preparing to use his magic to save the wounded knight. An orc's hide is far thicker than that of other monsters, requiring an attack of pinpoint accuracy. Eyes shut, the protagonist concentrates, needing to pierce the orc's tough skin with a single perfect shot. He decides to modify his ice ray formula, adding a high-precision projectile component. By incorporating a ballistic trajectory equation for stability, he dramatically increases the spell's completion level. The boy then crafts a new formula based on a type of weapon from his previous world. The wounded knight sees the orc bearing down on him and braces for the inevitable end. With a single perfect shot, the protagonist strikes the orc, eliminating it in one clean blow. The Duke is astounded by the accuracy of his son's shot, especially from such a great distance. Without hesitation, Dale spurs his horse forward, and his uncle wonders where he's rushing off to. But his father stops him, telling him to let the boy go, watching with a look of immense pride. A small smile plays on the Duke's lips as he realizes his son has just created an original magic formula. He is shocked by its destructive potential and sees that Dale's inner world is nearing completion. The protagonist surveys the battlefield, preparing to deal with the remaining orcs. He realizes the other orcs are regrouping, and he now faces two distinct problems. First, the wounded knight is frozen with panic, unable to move from his spot. Second, his original spell formula is too complex and inefficient for the chaos of real combat. He needs to streamline the formula, making it faster and more effective in battle. He mulls over a name for his new technique, deciding Ice 98 Magnum is a decent start. But he feels the name is still too cumbersome and opts for something simpler and more direct. A confident smile on his face, the boy christens his new technique the Ice Bullet. The wounded knight sees another orc charging him and lets out a terrified scream. But with a quick, precise shot, the protagonist hits the orc dead on, saving his comrade's life. The rescued knight is stunned, wondering why the young master would come to his aid. The protagonist dismounts and approaches the injured knight with a determined expression. With a gentle smile, the MC tells him not to worry because House Saxon never abandons its own. He states firmly that House Saxon never abandons a sword that remains loyal to its duty. The knight is deeply moved by the young master's words and looks at him with newfound admiration. But the respite is short-lived as the remaining orcs charge forward with a furious war cry. A determined look on his face, the protagonist prepares to unleash the power of his cloak of shadows. He conjures a blade of shadow and uses it to shield the wounded knight from the orcs' attacks. The shadow blades slice through the enemies with ease, and the boy smiles, pleased with the result. With a single command to consume, the shadows devour the orcs, leaving nothing but bones behind. One of the last remaining orcs is terrified by the boy's power, staring at him with a mix of fear and rage. The MC then forms a sphere of shadows and hurls it at the orc, completely engulfing it. The shadow morphs into a bizarre creature and devours the orc's head in a single, gruesome bite. The monster is completely consumed by the shadows, leaving behind only a scatter of bones. The protagonist turns to the final orc and, with a chilling smile, asks if he's still there. In the blink of an eye, the boy fires an ice bullet, finishing off the last enemy. The rescued knight calls out to him, admitting his legs are frozen with fear and won't move. With a tired smile, the MC walks over and helps the man to his feet. The boy lifts him into his arms and, with a relieved grin, says that they made it out alive. And with that, the protagonist once again demonstrated his strength and his unwavering resolve to protect his allies. Carrying the wounded knight, the boy tells his uncle Helmet that he's leaving the rest to him. With a thunderous war cry, the knight orders the cavalry battalions to charge with their full might. The knights roar for House Saxon and for their young master Dale as they surge into the final phase of the battle. Shortly after, back at the Saxon base, the Duke declares the orc subjugation a complete success. He calls the boy for a private talk, questioning his reckless actions during the battle. A stern look on his face, the father demands to know why he charged into the enemy lines alone. The protagonist is confused, wondering why he's being reprimanded for saving a comrade. The Duke demands an explanation, and the boy agrees to answer his father's question. He explains that he was simply fulfilling a leader's duty by protecting a knight he will one day command. A small smile plays on the father's lips as he calls his reasoning weak, confusing the boy further. The MC doesn't understand why his father is acting this way. He's famous for valuing his knights above all else. With a defiant look, the protagonist asks why his father just stood by and watched his knight about to perish. The Duke explains that the Demon King's territory is under constant threat from monster hordes. He still believed his father would save a loyal knight, a notion the Duke immediately challenges. Alan reprimands him, stating he has given those who must fight to survive the false hope of rescue. With a grave expression, the father asks how many knights with that mindset he thinks will actually survive. The boy falls silent, understanding the harsh logic behind his father's words. The Duke explains that the knights sharpen their blades to face these threats, and he only intervenes when they've reached their absolute limit. The protagonist recognizes the truth in his father's words, realizing he'd forgotten this grim reality. But even so, a part of him feels that something is wrong, that he can't just accept such cold logic. A smile appears on his father's face as he says the way he acted was impressive, telling him not to lose that spirit. The protagonist nods in agreement, and the Duke invites him to return to the castle together. The tale of the young hare who charged an orc horde to save a single knight spread like wildfire. People claimed the little lord had single-handedly defeated 1,000 orcs, and the story quickly became a legend. Although the protagonist found the exaggerated tale embarrassing, the incident breathed new life into the duchy. A few days later on the training grounds, the knights greet him with profound admiration and respect. The boy is a bit flustered by all the attention, saying such formality isn't necessary. But Uncle Helmet encourages him to take pride in his actions, which in turn motivates the knights to grow stronger. With a smile, the MC recognizes the passion of his knights and feels a deep sense of gratitude. Suddenly, a maid announces the arrival of guests from House Orhart, and his uncle goes to receive them. The boy thanks the maid Eve and prepares to greet the special visitors. He knew that the martial House Orhart and its patriarch Bardel were once great nobles of the Kingdom of Teutonia. But when the Empire began its war of unification, both the kingdom and House Orhart were destroyed. Upon hearing the name Orhart, Helmet's expression darkens, and the MC notices his deep sadness. The protagonist knows his uncle is remembering the Divine Sword, the man who had been his mentor in the cavalry. A worried look crosses the boy's face, realizing the situation could become very uncomfortable for his uncle. Back in the main hall, the Duke greets them, asking if they had a good training session that day. The protagonist confirms they did, and his father prepares to announce the guests' arrival. With the arrival of House Orhart, a tense atmosphere, heavy with memories of the past, settles over the castle. And with that, the boy steels himself for yet another challenge on his journey to grow stronger. The Duke instructs his son to escort the guests with the utmost respect, and the boy agrees. 2 women from House Ord arrive, and the protagonist is impressed they made the journey alone. The older woman introduces herself as Vanessa Orhart, humbly greeting Duke Saxon. With a solemn expression, Vanessa lifts her veil and prepares to introduce her companion. She introduces her daughter, Charlotte Orhart, who glares at the Duke with open suspicion. The protagonist is baffled by the girl's attitude, wondering what she's trying to imply. Angrily, Charlotte demands to know why her mother is bowing to them, scolding her for her submissiveness. The Duke cuts off the argument, stating they must have endured a great deal to make it there. He then tasks his son Dale with escorting the young Lady Charlotte on a tour of the castle. With a gentle smile, the protagonist approaches the girl, extending a hand to her. But with a look of pure contempt, Charlotte rejects his gesture, ordering him not to touch her. She slaps his hand away, and the boy is stunned by her completely unexpected reaction. The Duke and Duchess are both taken aback by the girl's behavior and watch her with concern. A look of fury on her face, Charlotte calls the imperial nobles shameless and glares at them defiantly. Her mother reprimands her sharply, ordering her to apologize at once for her insolence. But the girl merely clicks her tongue and storms out of the room with a defiant look. The protagonist tries to stop her, but she dashes out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Vanessa apologizes profusely for her daughter's behavior, insisting she's not normally like this. She explains that after recent events, Charlotte's emotions have been unstable and she's deeply shaken. The Duchess asks what happened, preparing herself to hear the story behind the girl's outburst. Vanessa reveals that a new supervisor, Count Brandenburg, has been assigned to their territory. He is widely known as the Holy Knight of the Empire, and his reputation precedes him. Rumor has it that in his quest to produce a talented heir, he preys upon any skilled swordswoman he can find. A look of horror on her face, the mother recounts how he attempted to force himself upon her daughter, Charlotte. The Duke and Duchess listen to the harrowing story with expressions of deep concern and empathy. Vanessa pleads with them to take her daughter in as a maid to protect her from the predatory Count. Out on the training grounds, the protagonist finds young Charlotte and calls out her name. A defiant look in her eyes, the girl spins around, facing him with her sword drawn. The MC asks if she even knows where she's going, to which she replies that she doesn't care. He asks if her hand is alright from earlier and, with a gentle smile, tells her not to worry about it. The protagonist notices she's been crying and wonders if she's still upset about what happened. Suddenly, with a fierce glint in her eye, the girl lunges forward, challenging him to a duel. She calls him Dale of House Saxon and commands him to draw his sword and fight her. The boy is taken aback by the challenge, thinking she just does whatever she wants without a second thought. With a determined expression, young Charlotte faces him down, challenging him to a proper fight. A small smile plays on the protagonist's lips as he says he'll need a good reason to fight her. She brings up the rumors she's heard of an incredible boy who single-handedly slaughtered 1,000 orcs. A confident smirk on his face, the MC readies himself for the challenge, accepting the girl's duel. Charlotte declares she will defeat him and prove to the world that she is the stronger one. By doing so, she claims she'll prove she can protect her house from that man, which piques the boy's interest. Hearing the name Count Brandenburg, the protagonist is overcome with shock and a surge of white-hot anger. He could never forget the face of the man who stabbed him in the back in his previous life. The MC realizes they share a common enemy and that this girl could prove to be a valuable ally. With a determined expression, the boy prepares for the duel, while the girl eyes him with suspicion. He tells her she's just a child who doesn't understand anything and readies himself for the fight. With a confident smile, the protagonist tells her to come at him with everything she has. Angered by his words, the girl retorts that she intended to do just that and prepares her attack. She unleashes a flurry of swift, precise strikes, but the MC manages to defend against them. The boy skillfully blocks the girl's attacks with his dagger as the duel intensifies. The two exchange blows at a blinding speed, and the protagonist is impressed by her raw skill. A look of fierce determination on her face, the girl continues her assault with surprising ferocity. The MC notes how she dodges each of his attacks with nimble movements, even channeling a bit of aura. He realizes she's using aura to wield a greatsword that should be too large and heavy for her. Just as a mage generates mana, a knight can accumulate aura in their body to surpass physical limits. The two are locked in a stalemate, and the boy is genuinely impressed by her strength and skill. In a fluid motion, the girl tosses her sword into the air, a move that surprises the protagonist. He recognizes that she is a true knight at heart, one who will not give up easily. A confident smile on her face, young Charlotte prepares for her next assault. She advances with a new wave of powerful strikes, and the MC braces himself to defend. A smirk appears on the girl's face as she senses she has the upper hand, preparing to end the duel. A flashback reveals that when young Charlotte was born, her father had already passed from this world. But every night her mother would tell her stories about him, about the great warrior he had been. She would say that it was the girl's duty to protect their house in his stead, as the daughter of the divine sword. And even as their kingdom fell and their house crumbled, she never stopped training, never put down her sword. A look of pure frustration on her face, the girl wonders why her sword is continuously being stopped by this boy. She realizes something is wrong, she can't seem to break through the protagonist's defense at all. With a swift movement, the MC dodges yet another attack, and the girl's frustration grows. She leaps into the air for an overhead strike, but the boy blocks it with ease. In a quick, precise motion, the protagonist disarms her, sending her sword flying through the air. Disarmed and defeated, young Charlotte wonders why she is unable to win this duel. The MC tells her it's because she is not the divine sword, though her pride as his daughter is not misplaced. He reminds her that as she is now, she has no hope of protecting her house from that despicable man. With tears in her eyes, the girl admits that the Holy Knight's sword is far stronger than her own. Desperately, she asks what she must do to become stronger, to be able to protect her home. A determined look in his eyes, the protagonist declares that he, Dale of House Saxon, swears to become her protector. The girl is stunned by the boy's promise, looking at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. He proclaims that House Saxon will be her shield until the day she is strong enough to protect herself. She asks why he would do this for her, and the MC replies that it's because her sword is worthy of it. With a serious expression, he asks her to swear to become a sword for him and for House Saxon. Charlotte wipes away her tears and, with a look of newfound determination, accepts the boy's proposal. A small smile on her face, the girl says she couldn't possibly refuse such a generous offer. Kneeling before him, Charlotte swears on her honor as a knight and formally accepts his proposal. Though it may have seemed like a childish promise, the determination behind it was unshakable as a sacred vow. That day in the Duke's office, Charlotte was officially instated as a maid of House Saxon. The Duke is surprised she agreed without any hesitation and questions his son about what transpired. The protagonist reveals that they made a promise and that he has sworn to protect House Orhart. A serious expression on his face, the father asks if he invoked the family name simply out of pity for the girl. The boy denies this and, with a confident smile, his father asks what he aims to gain from this alliance. He explains that the bloodline of the Divine Sword is exceptional, and they have forged a new oath. The MC reveals that what he truly seeks is a new Divine Sword, one that will be wielded for the good of the duchy. A satisfied smile spreads across the Duke's face as he praises his son's strategic foresight and congratulates him. A small smirk on his lips, the protagonist celebrates having the last of the Divine Sword's bloodline under his roof. In the former capital of Teutonia, Count Brandenburg is enraged when he receives the news. He smashes his wine goblet in a fit of fury, cursing the Duke for getting to her first. His subordinates apologize for their failure, and the Count berates them as fools for failing to capture one girl. They reveal that they did dispatch assassins, but they were killed before they could even reach House Saxon. They suspect that Charlotte herself must have fought and defeated the assassins single-handedly. A look of frustration on his face, the Count realizes he has severely underestimated the young swordswoman's abilities. And so, the rivalry between the two houses deepens and the shadow of a new battle looms large. The protagonist and his newfound allies prepare themselves for the future and the challenges that await. With a heavy sigh, the Count laments his subordinates' incompetence and walks over to a sword display. He reminisces about his glory days, thinking of how much simpler things were in the past. With the sword in his hand, he recalls the hero who defeated him and the burning desire for vengeance that followed. A malicious smile twists his lips as he vows to find the perfect heir to carry on his will. He orders the Thieves' Guild to send men into the Duke's territory to abduct the girl. A look of pure hatred in his eyes, the Count commands them to pay any price necessary to bring young Charlotte to him. A week later, Charlotte is settling into the ducal residence and has begun intense training. On the training grounds, Uncle Helmut asks if the two of them are ready for their duel. With a confident smile, the protagonist confirms he is and prepares for combat with the girl. A determined look on her face, young Charlotte also readies herself, and the duel is about to commence. A smirk on his face, the uncle gives the signal, and the two young sword fighters charge at each other. They exchange blows at a dizzying speed, and the sheer intensity of the duel surprises the sword master. In a fluid motion, the MC uses two daggers to defend against the girl's relentless attacks. A look of surprise crosses young Charlotte's face as she realizes the protagonist is even more skilled than she thought. The boy nimbly dodges her strikes, and the fight becomes increasingly fierce and evenly matched. A determined look in her eyes, the girl continues to attack with all of her strength and skill. Uncle Helmut observes the duel, impressed by the incredible skill and speed of the two combatants. He wonders if this can truly be called a duel between children, praising their palpable killing intent. The knight notes that while they aren't yet at the level of knights, their speed is truly remarkable. A look of admiration on his face, he watches the exchange of blows, curious to see who will emerge victorious. In a swift, decisive move, the protagonist evades the girl's attack and disarms her. Uncle Helmut praises their excellent work and offers his congratulations to young Charlotte. But the girl tells him to save his empty praise and asks what areas she still needs to improve. A small smile on his face, the knight asks if she knows the true essence of the sword. The girl replies that is momentum, but her uncle corrects her, saying that's not quite right. He reveals that the true essence lies in one's footwork and the movement of their legs. The knight explains that while Dale was dodging, he was simultaneously closing the distance between them. A frustrated look on her face, young Charlotte realizes she made a critical error in her strategy. Helmut tells her she will need to completely rebuild her fundamentals to become a better swordswoman. He points out that he noticed her posture and footwork are rough and highly unconventional. The uncle then offers to personally correct her thrusting posture, which makes the girl a bit flustered. The knight laughs, saying he was only teasing, but the MC silently wonders just how quickly she will grow. The process of forming mana circles is the same for every mage in this world. His teacher is astonished to learn that he has already completed his second mana circle. A mage's mana circle is measured in RPMs. A first circle mage's typically rotates at around 300. Currently, the boy's first circle measures 2000 RPMs and his second 400 RPMs. A thoughtful look on his face, the protagonist decides that since he's reached his second circle, he can conduct an experiment. He resolves to enhance his ice bullet technique, aiming to make it even more powerful. The MC plans to strengthen the molecular bonds to increase the projectile's mass and hardness. By designing a large caliber barrel, he will also increase the shot's rotation and velocity. With a determined expression, the protagonist unleashes his new technique, the armor-piercing bullet. The ice projectile smashes into a tree with devastating force, blasting a massive hole through it. The MC is taken aback by the power of his new spell, wondering if it's always been this easy. His teacher praises him, remarking that, as always, he's a quick study, and congratulates him on his achievement. With a smile, the boy thanks his master, saying it's all due to her excellent teachings. The elf watches the boy, noticing that he always seems to use his strength for the right reasons. Although he frightens her at times, she feels a deep sense of trust in him and his intentions. Embracing him, the master tells him he is her proudest student and commends his incredible progress. The protagonist is a bit flustered by the physical contact, thinking she's very comfortable with it. At dawn that same day, the boy stands in the duchy's courtyard, reflecting on recent events. He wonders if his master only sees him as a child and resolves to focus on his training. With a sharp command, the MC conjures a massive ice wall, preparing for a new test. He uses his magic to create a barrier of sharp, pointed ice crystals. Next, he launches a new version of his ice bullet, this time firing multiple projectiles at once. The projectiles scatter like a shotgun blast, peppering the ice wall with immense force. A look of satisfaction on his face, the protagonist analyzes the results of his new spell. He decides that next time he'll try adapting the technique into a single, more powerful projectile. Suddenly, he hears a voice call his name and turns to see who's there. Young Charlotte is watching him with a curious expression, remarking so this is where he's been practicing. And with that, the boy realizes his new ally had been observing him throughout his entire training session. The girl points her sword at Dale, saying she's been practicing what Uncle Helmet taught her. The protagonist then comments that she seems to really enjoy swordsmanship, and the young woman agrees. A serious look on his face, the MC tries to bring up what happened before, and Charlotte looks at him, confused. Her face flushing, she then apologizes for having been so rude to young Master Dale. The boy thinks to himself that she was, in fact, incredibly rude, and the swordswoman is shocked by his honesty. But with a radiant smile, he says he'll forgive her this time, much to the girl's relief. She asks if he really means it, and he tells her not to be so formal, and the girl agrees excitedly. The two of them stand together in the snowy forest, and Dale comments on how much he loves the climate there. He explains that he can train late into the night, and the crisp, cold air helps him cool down quickly. A smile on her face, young Charlotte seems to understand exactly what he means. Leaning against a tree, the protagonist is happy to know someone else feels the same way about training. Together in the snow, the MC remarks on how time seems to fly by whenever they're out here. From a window above, his parents watch them, and the Duke remarks that his son is already at the age for flirting. His mother agrees they make a handsome couple, and Alan says they'll have to keep a close eye on those two. The Duchess then thinks to herself that it's her duty as a mother to help guide her son Dale's feelings. A short time later, on the outskirts of the duchy, the boy's mother is aiding someone in need. Every week, the Duchess would visit the city's slums to provide assistance to the beggars and homeless. Starting that year, the protagonist and Charlotte began to accompany her, helping the less fortunate. Suddenly, a small, grubby boy grabs Charlotte's arm, desperately pleading for help. The boy cries that his mother is in danger, a revelation that shocks the young swordswoman. With tears streaming down his face, the little boy continues to beg for help for his mother. Dale observes the situation with deep suspicion as they follow the small boy. The protagonist notes that they've left their escort behind, and that the plea was directed specifically at Charlotte. As they run through an alley, the MC spots a cloaked figure watching them from a nearby rooftop. He instantly recognizes the man as a member of the Thieves' Guild, confirming that their target is indeed Charlotte. The little boy stops and tells them to wait a moment while he goes inside to get his mother. But at that instant, a heavy boot emerges from the shadows, and the atmosphere in the alley becomes thick with tension. Suddenly, several armed men step out from the darkness, surrounding the two of them in the middle of the street. The group's leader states their business is only with the girl and tells the MC to get lost. A sinister smile on his face, the man warns him not to interfere, or he might get hurt. But with a confident smile of his own, the protagonist vows to protect the daughter of House Orhart from these thugs. He steps in front of the girl, facing down the henchmen and declaring he won't let them lay a hand on her. The leader of the thugs scoffs at the boy's bravery, cynically praising his nobility. Then he sneers that the young master should have thought twice before getting involved. With that, the henchmen ready their weapons, making it clear they are not playing around. Charlotte whispers that she left her sword behind, but the MC tells her not to worry. The boy sees this as the perfect opportunity to test out his new shadow cloak technique. Without hesitation, the four thugs rush the surrounded young pair simultaneously. But Dale activates his cloak, unleashing a wave of dark energy that hits all the enemies at once. Seeing this, the leader of the thugs panics, screaming desperately for his men to dodge. The protagonist recognizes the leader as a high-level thief due to his quick reaction. But even so, his men aren't fast enough and are engulfed by the wave of shadows. One of the henchmen panics, but it's far too late for him to escape the boy's attack. The cloak's new technique creates shadow parasites that swarm over and infect the fallen targets. Stunned, the leader of the thugs can only watch, unable to comprehend what just happened. The bodies of his fallen men begin to twist and contort, mutating into something monstrous. Suddenly, one of the henchmen lurches to its feet as a zombie, letting out a terrifying shriek. The other thugs are horrified, recognizing the creature as a ravenous, hungry undead. The leader orders them to attack and destroy the creature before it can cause more chaos. Furious, the chief of the thieves declares that it doesn't matter if he's the Duke's son, he will eliminate him. Then, several more assassins emerge from the shadows, rushing the protagonist all at once. The leader uses an assassination technique infused with aura, launching a volley of daggers at the boy. With a determined look, the MC uses his shadow cloak to shield himself from the projectiles. The thieves' chief then leaps forward for a final attack, but the protagonist has a surprise for him. The boy forms a magic circle and unleashes a double-barreled shotgun spell on his enemy. The attack hits the leader squarely, the sheer force of the magic blasting him backward. From her hiding spot, Charlotte watches the fight with a worried expression, calling out Dale's name. The undead monster then lunges forward, attacking one of the remaining thugs with its sharp claws. The leader of the thieves struggles to his feet, wounded, and the MC notes the resilience of aura users. Despite his injuries, the chief declares it's not over and prepares to continue the fight. With a roar of rage, the chief charges, but the protagonist unleashes another attack with his cloak. The undead monster then charges, tearing into the other henchman with its razor-sharp claws. Famished, the shadow creature attacks without mercy, demonstrating its true, terrifying power. Dale then makes his way over to Charlotte, who is sitting on the ground, still shaken by the ordeal. He asks if she's okay, and the girl just nods, still too stunned to speak. The last surviving henchman tries to make a run for it, but the protagonist stops him with an ice bullet. The thief screams in agony as the MC freezes him in place, ensuring he can't escape. Desperate, the man pleads to be saved, and the boy orders the shadow creature to stand down. The henchman promises to tell him everything he knows if the young master will just spare his life. With a fake smile, the thief offers to spill everything, but the protagonist isn't interested. Without a moment's hesitation, the MC fires another ice bullet, finishing off the last enemy for good. A cold look in his eyes, the protagonist states that he's not particularly interested in what he has to say. He turns back to Charlotte, who looks at him with a mixture of admiration and fear. A serious expression on his face, the boy approaches her, and the young swordswoman flinches slightly. The MC explains that this is the true power of House Saxon, and that he will wield it to protect her. He asks how she feels, seeing this power up close, and whether she is afraid of what she saw. The girl admits she is a little scared, but that it's alright because he was protecting her. With a small smile, young Charlotte says he fought to keep her safe, and for that she is grateful. Kneeling, the girl makes a new vow, promising to become the sword that will fight by his side. A determined smile on her face, she thanks him for showing her what her future could mean. The protagonist listens to the girl's words with a serious, thoughtful expression, contemplating the future. He realizes her promise holds a much deeper meaning than he had initially imagined. A flashback shows the MC remembering the immense guilt he felt over what happened to Sir Battle. Back then, he had been forced by the Empire to eliminate a good and honorable man. Now, the protagonist extends a hand to that very man's daughter, welcoming her into his home. Charlotte's decision to become his sword is a pivotal step for both of their futures. With a firm handshake, they seal a pact that will forever alter the course of both their destinies. The true significance of that gesture was far greater than young Dale could possibly comprehend at that moment. Meanwhile, at Count Brandenburg's estate, he is seething over the latest developments. In a fit of rage, the Count curses everyone, frustrated that his carefully laid plans have failed. Suddenly, a letter arrives and the Count reads it with a look of contempt and barely suppressed fury. Duke Saxon has invited him for a visit to his duchy, an invitation the Count knows he cannot refuse. Even the great holy swordsman cannot decline a direct summons from the Noir Duke. A few days later, at the castle of the Duchy of Saxon, the Duke formally receives Count Brandenburg. The Count arrives with his retinue of knights, facing the Duke with a challenging stare. The Duke greets him, remarking that he hadn't expected him to arrive at the castle so quickly. With a slight smile, Alan apologizes for the humble reception, and the Count responds with pure sarcasm. The Count says nothing could be more urgent than a summons from his grace, and glares at him. From a hidden vantage point, the protagonist and Charlotte watch the scene, the MC calling them slippery brats. The Duke then states that after the recent commotion at the ducal estate, there is great concern within the Empire. A mocking smile on his face, the Count says he thinks he can guess the reason for this summons. Then, with a dark aura swirling around him, the Duke questions if a loyal sword of the Emperor would stoop to such dirty tricks. Without any warning, Alan launches a powerful blast of dark magic directly at the Holy Swordsman. The magic slams into the Count's knights, who are caught completely off guard and sent flying. Consumed by the encroaching darkness, the knights scream for their lord to help them. The Count watches in shock. Not even his elite knights of St. Magdalene can resist this power. A grave expression on his face, the Holy Swordsman recognizes the strength of this dark, potent magic. The Duke then reveals the spell's name in advanced dark magic known as Voidstorm. With absolute authority, Alan then commands the great Holy Swordsman to kneel before him. The Count shouts, questioning his audacity, but the Duke silences him, telling him to listen very carefully. The Dark Lord warns that there will not be a second warning, and the Count grits his teeth in pure, unadulterated rage. Even though he had justification on his side, the Count never expected the Duke to go this far. Left with no other choice, the great Holy Swordsman sinks to his knees before the powerful Noir Lord. Seated on his throne, the Duke states he summoned him in the name of peace between their two houses. But he then threatens to completely exterminate House Brandenburg if they ever dare to touch his children again. The Duke asks, from the bottom of his heart, that the Count accept this new reality between them. He then invites him to rest and warm himself, acknowledging he must be tired from his long journey. The Count refuses, calling his generosity humiliating, and states that unfortunately he cannot stay. A slight smile plays on the Duke's lips, as he seems to perfectly understand the Holy Swordsman's predicament. The Duke then wishes him a safe journey back, and the Count retreats from the Grand Throne Room. What the Duke showed Count Brandenburg, one of the Emperor's most loyal retainers, that day, would be the spark that sets the entire empire ablaze, igniting a great war between the nations. It all began with the smallest ember, but it wouldn't be long before the fires spread everywhere, and it would be their duty to eliminate the Holy Swordsman and all of his allies in the ensuing chaos. In the Duke's office, Professor Cephia is summoned for a private conversation with her master. The elf is horrified by the state of the thieves' bodies left behind after the fight. The Duke reveals that these are the remains of the Thieves' Guild members who had attacked Dale. Shocked, the teacher can't bring herself to believe that a single boy was responsible for all this. The bodies were torn to shreds, riddled with holes, their insides gruesomely exposed. For the first time in a very long time, Cephia begins to doubt herself and her methods of teaching. The Duke then offers her the position of chief advisor to help guide Dale's immense talents. The elf realizes he is asking her to become a permanent part of House Saxon, not just a temporary tutor. The Duke explains that Dale relies on her heavily and that he cannot guide the boy's potential alone. With her support, things could change, and the boy could grow to become a great leader in the future. After some reflection, the teacher accepts the proposal, committing herself to guiding the young master. For the elf, understanding how this child views the world has now become her most important task. Time passed and the day of Dale's 10th birthday finally arrived, marked by a grand celebration. Unlike the previous year's party, this time even envoys from the Emperor's court were in attendance. And among all the distinguished guests, the most notable was a man with fiery red hair and lavish clothing. The protagonist approaches and greets him respectfully, addressing him as Marquis Eurus. A smile on his face, the Marquis says it is an honor to meet the young Master Dale and returns the greeting. Just moments before, the guests were marveling at the magnificent banquet and the immense wealth of House Saxon. One nobleman comments on how beautiful everything is, saying it hardly feels like the harsh northern territory. The protagonist watches everything with a sharp eye, carefully analyzing the guests' behavior. These are the nobles from the imperial capital, the Emperor's own faction, the largest power block in the empire. The boy understands the reason for their presence is painfully obvious. It's an implicit warning to his house. It's a clear message from the imperial family, telling them not to disrespect the Holy Swordsman. And the chosen messenger tasked with delivering this message is standing right in front of our MC. The Marquis then approaches, asking with a polite smile if he is the young Master Dale. He introduces himself as the Crimson Lord Marquis Eurus and expresses his pleasure at meeting him. Eurus is the master of the Red Tower, a man who seeks flame, fury, and power, all in the name of order. The mages of the Red Tower were obsessed with the idea that might makes right, and had become the Empire's enforcers. The protagonist remembers all too well being subjected to their cruel modification experiments. Eurus calls him a prodigy and a genius, saying he has heard tales of his unparalleled magical talent. The rumor that he annihilated an entire orc horde at just 9 years old had also reached his ears. A small smile on his face, the MC listens as the Marquis says this was to be expected from his Grace's son. The boy offers his thanks for the kind words and, with a polite bow, wishes him an enjoyable evening. Stepping outside for some fresh air, the protagonist thinks how tiresome it is to have his birthday celebrated every year. He would much rather be training with Charlotte, but she now officially serves as his mother's handmaiden. Besides, it would be dangerous for her if word got out that they were training, so he resolves to practice alone. Suddenly, a desperate cry for help rings out through the garden, and the protagonist spins around, startled. Hearing the voice, he wonders if it could be he thinks it is and sprints towards the sound. A maid is pleading for help, stating she serves House Saxon, but her attacker seems completely indifferent. A corpulent noble holds her fast, mocking her for invoking the Duke's name in vain. The man sneers that everyone is busy with the birthday celebration and no one will hear her screams. Holding a dagger to the girl's throat, he threatens her, telling her to be a good girl and do as she's told. Just then, the protagonist arrives, catching the noble in the act of harassing the maid in the castle garden. Furious, Dale demands to know what he thinks he's doing to one of his family's maids. A cold look in his eyes, the MC approaches, and the noble turns, surprised by the boy's sudden appearance. The attacker addresses him as young master, and asks what brings him here so unexpectedly. A look of barely contained rage on his face, the protagonist asks if he has ever enjoyed the company of a woman. The noble laughs, saying he highly doubts such a young boy has had that particular experience. With a lecherous grin, he offers to teach young Master Dale a thing or two about it. The attacker promises to show him a good time, and the MC glares at him with pure hatred. But with a confident smile, the boy tells the maid not to worry, promising he'll get her out of this. He forms a magic circle, preparing to unleash a powerful spell on the corpulent noble. The attacker believes no one would dare strike him due to his rank, but he is sorely mistaken. In a flash, the protagonist launches a powerful blast of ice directly at the noble. The attack hits him squarely, sending him flying and freeing the maid from his disgusting grasp. A determined look on his face, the MC declares he has no intention of backing down and glares at him with contempt. The noble thinks to himself that challenging one of the Emperor's own is not the wisest move. Sprawled on the ground, he demands to know what young Master Dale thinks he's doing. With a furious shout, the protagonist asks if he didn't hear him, shocking the noble. Dale then commands him to get on his knees and apologize to Miss Eve at once. The attacker calls him a brat, arguing that she is merely a maid and a servant of House Saxon. The noble struggles to his feet, declaring he is a representative of the Emperor, and to insult him is to insult the Emperor himself. But the MC counters, asking if the Emperor makes a habit of harassing the servants of noble houses for sport. The attacker is stunned by the question, unable to believe the boy's sheer audacity. Suddenly, the Duke and the other nobles appear, and the protagonist warns the man this is his final chance. A small smile plays on Marquis Eurus' lips as he observes the scene, finding it all very amusing. Standing beside Alan, the Marquis seems to be thoroughly enjoying the unfolding chaos. The Duke then asks what is going on, and the MC explains that the man was harassing one of his maids. The noble tries to defend himself, claiming the young master acted recklessly, a claim the Duke questions. With a sharp cry, the protagonist asks if he gave him permission to stand, shocking the noble again. Dale states that the guests from the capital are here to act on the Emperor's behalf, and the man agrees. But this man, he continues, tried to tarnish His Majesty's name by harassing a simple maid. For that reason, the boy could not stand by and allow Lord Petro's shameful conduct to go unpunished. A small smile on his face, Marquis Eurus calls him a clever young man and continues to watch the scene. Eurus agrees with the boy, stating that he is speaking the truth of the situation. He then approaches the fallen noble, reprimanding him for stooping to such a low level. A malicious smile spreads across Marquis Eurus' face as he conjures a flame on his fingertips and utters the word, burn. The fallen noble panics at the sight of the fire magic, and Eurus calls him a filthy insect. Desperately, the man tries to flee, but it's far too late for him to escape the Marquis's attack. A dark look in his eyes, Eurus unleashes a powerful wave of fire that consumes the noble's body. The attack hits the aggressor full on, and he is completely engulfed in the intense flames. The man screams in agony as his body is consumed by the fire, and the protagonist watches impassively. The Marquis then states that the boy spoke the truth, and it is his duty to purge those who insult the Empire. With a chilling smile, he says he looks forward to seeing young Master Dale's future and approaches him. The MC meets his gaze with a serious, thoughtful expression, contemplating the party's dramatic events. With the end of the commotion, the Emperor's people take their leave, and peace returns to House Saxon. The next morning, the maid Eve comes to wake young Master Dale in his room as usual. The boy wakes up groggily, and the maid tells him it's time to get up and start the day. A bashful look on her face, the girl thanks him for waking her, which confuses the MC. He asks if there's something she wants to say, and the maid thanks him for saving her life. Eve says it is an honor for someone like her to serve such a kind and noble master. The protagonist wonders if that was all she was hesitating to say and observes her. With a gentle smile, he thanks the maid for her service, addressing her by her name, Eve. The MC understands the power a name can hold and intends to use it in any way he can to bring down the Empire. Later in his study, the Duke calls for his son, remarking that while he's clever, his behavior is odd. A serious expression on his face, the father states that the boy's behavior of late has been highly peculiar. A serious look in his eyes, the protagonist asks why his father is saying such a thing. The Duke reveals that if the hero from another world hadn't been eliminated, the Duchy of Saxon would have been the next target. A look of deep regret on his face, the MC's father laments the situation, a revelation that surprises the boy. Dale then declares that to be a blasphemous assertion, and the Duke eyes him with suspicion. His father questions how he can be so certain, and the boy prepares to give his answer. The MC reveals he learned of the Empire's conspiracy against House Saxon during his past life. The Empire discarded the hero because they feared what would happen if he ever turned against them. Even after the Demon King's defeat, the Empire made no effort to cleanse the darkness from his former domain. Instead, they issued the absurd order to cultivate the Demon King's land and make it imperial territory. The protagonist reveals they even granted that land to him, demanding further sacrifices from his house. As long as the darkness remains uncleansed, the slow bleeding of House Saxon will never stop. Moreover, people both within the Empire and beyond the northern borders refer to them as the Clan of Darkness. Just as they abandon the hero, they will eventually try to remove any internal threats to their power. The Duke is stunned by this revelation and asks how he could possibly know the hero was abandoned. The boy claims it's merely deductions and reasoning based on the historical records he has read. Officially, the hero met an honorable end after a fierce battle with the divine sword, Bardal. The Duke admits it's natural he'd be surprised, as very few people know the true story behind the hero's passing. If the MC's theory is correct, then the Empire is nothing more than an oppressor, taking weaker nations by force. The father realizes his son possesses a wisdom far beyond his years and studies him intently. He then asks what House Saxon should do from this point forward, and the boy answers without a shred of hesitation. A look of fierce determination in his eyes, the boy declares they must destroy the Empire, once and for all. The Duke is utterly shocked by his son's declaration, staring at him with an expression of pure disbelief. Angrily, the father demands to know if he has any idea what he is suggesting with such an absurd proposal. The MC clarifies that he's not suggesting they raise an army and launch an immediate rebellion. He then states that the plan is for 10 years in the future, which only confuses the Duke further. The protagonist explains that resistance groups across the continent are already fighting for their independence. There are vassals, like the Duke himself, who live in constant fear that the Empire will turn on them at any moment. The economy is shrinking, banditry is on the rise daily, and the after effects of the war have only worsened. By that time, they will have amassed enough strength to defend their house against the Empire's might. They will cleverly support the resistance forces in various regions, weakening the enemy from within. The boy laid out his entire plan to topple the Empire, speaking with his father until the sun had set. After hearing everything, the Duke remained silent for a long moment, reflecting on all his son had said. A small smile plays on the MC's father's lips as he seems satisfied with the boy's strategy and foresight. He laughs, saying his son's talents truly know no bounds, and praises him. The protagonist listens intently as the Duke admits he sees things that even he, himself, cannot perceive. A look of immense pride on his face, the father says he is incredibly proud of his son and places a hand on his shoulder. From this day forward, he will no longer be just the Duke's eldest son, nor a 10-year-old child. The Duke will treat him as his true heir, the boy who will one day lead House Saxon to glory. With a confident smile, the MC states that as the head of the house, he will listen to and respect his father's words. The father then encourages him to speak his mind without hesitation, asking what decision he will make for the family. A confident smile on his face, the boy asks for permission to undertake the Tower Trial in the necropolis. The Tower Trial is a competition to determine the ranking among mages, where they face off against powerful guardians. Defeating stronger guardians elevates one's rank, with the ultimate victor earning the title of Tower Elder. His father questions if he truly wishes to enter such a dangerous place, where he could easily lose his life. The Duke argues it's far too soon for him, as the boy hasn't even completed his third circle. But the MC assures him he will achieve it soon, and his father replies that even for him, that would be difficult. A look of sheer determination in his eyes, the protagonist states this decision is for both himself and for House Saxon. If he proves his mettle in the Tower Trial, his status as heir will be solidified, and he'll gain a formidable reputation. He will earn a reputation built on trust and skill, not one cobbled together from gossip and baseless rumors. A small smile plays on the Duke's lips as he asks if that is the true reason he wishes to use the trial. A satisfied smile on his face, the father agrees, saying he will leave the matter to his son's discretion. The boy offers his thanks, vowing to prove his worth to his father and to his entire family. A few days later, in the city of the dead necropolis, the protagonist arrives to take the trial. A carriage pulls up before a grand gate where a small group of people are waiting. From within the carriage, the Duke emerges, and everyone bows in deep respect to the Noir Lord. Humbly, they present themselves before the Duke and welcome him to the city of the dead. Beside his father, the protagonist lets out a yawn, clearly tired from the long journey. The boy wonders if he's been pushing himself too hard again and feels a wave of exhaustion. From a distance, several onlookers watch the arrival of the Duke and his son, murmuring amongst themselves. One of them questions if it's true that young Master Dale is a magical genius of unprecedented skill. Another person notes that he doesn't look very well, but the first one tells them not to doubt him. From afar, a snobbish noble overhears their conversation and scoffs at the idea of Dale being a genius. He introduces himself as Velik, the top graduate of the academy, and vows that he will be the one to win the trial. Alongside his father, the protagonist approaches the Tower Master, and they exchange greetings. A woman named Eris greets the Duke, introducing herself as a Tower Elder and the General Secretary. The father explains that Eris will be assisting the boy during the trial, and the MC nods with a smile. The protagonist then bids his father farewell, stating he will be in Eris's care from now on. The secretary guides him, revealing that 59 academy graduates are awaiting him for the trial. She opens a large door to reveal an arena teeming with competitors, all ready for the challenge. The protagonist surveys his numerous opponents, steeling himself for the start of the Tower Trial. Eris introduces herself to the assembled mages as the Tower Elder and the trial's general supervisor. She then begins to explain the first trial of the Noir Magic Tower, holding up a necklace. The trial is a battle royal, where each necklace contains a shield spell and represents 1 life point. When a competitor is struck by a valid hit, their necklace activates the shield and then shatters. The attacker gains an additional life point, and any participant who reaches 3 points advances to the next floor. Finally, anyone caught using artifacts will be disqualified for cheating. The MC finds the rules quite efficient. A look of determination on his face, the boy prepares himself, but suddenly, one of the competitors glares at him. The mage calls him a monster, wondering how it's possible for him to be a third circle mage at his age. A smirk on his face, the snobbish noble says there's no reason to worry about the boy. The protagonist overhears their conversation and, with a confident smile, prepares to show them his true skills. Eris gives the signal, and the Tower Trial finally kicks off, with all the competitors taking their positions. The participants begin casting their spells, preparing for the battle that is about to erupt. In a blur of motion, one mage attacks another, and the arena instantly transforms into a chaotic battlefield. Dale takes advantage of the confusion, using his necromancy to reanimate the bodies of the fallen. One of the corpses lurches to its feet as a zombie and attacks a terrified competitor. The mage tries to defend himself, but the zombie strikes him with a powerful blow, sending him flying. The competitor is shocked to see his attack had no effect, and the zombie stares him down. Suddenly, the protagonist appears behind the zombie, and the competitor can't understand what just happened. Using his water magic, Dale freezes the zombie solid, a sight that surprises the competitor. Shocked, the mage recognizes the water element magic and can hardly believe what he's seeing. Another competitor wonders if the boy could possibly be a dual-element mage and stares at him with admiration. One of the ice zombies attacks another competitor, shattering him with a single, freezing blow. Dale then turns to one of the mages, questioning him for daring to touch his undead soldiers. The competitor attempts to attack the zombie, but the protagonist protects it with a layer of ice armor. The MC explains that it's useless. He has shielded his soldiers with a powerful suit of ice armor. In a swift motion, the zombie strikes the mage, shattering his necklace and eliminating him from the trial. The snobbish noble accuses him of breaking the rules by using water element magic in the trial. He insists that only necromancy and magic that controls the dead are permitted in this competition. Secretary Iris overhears the argument but remains silent, simply observing the scene. The noble realizes the trial hasn't been stopped and understands that the protagonist is, in fact, in the right. The snobbish noble then orders his allies to hold off the zombies and attack Dale directly. With that, several competitors surge forward, surrounding the protagonist and trying to overwhelm him with numbers. The MC recalls that the use of artifacts is also prohibited and comes up with a new battle plan. Unable to use his artifacts, the boy decides that close-quarters combat is his only viable option. He charges forward, kicking a fallen weapon off the ground and using it as a projectile against his zombie. With a series of swift movements, he dodges the zombie's attacks, weaving through the battlefield. The protagonist sprints towards one of the zombies, preparing for a hand-to-hand assault. With an agile move, he evades a clumsy swing and prepares to counter-attack the monster. Channeling his dark magic, the boy delivers a powerful punch to the zombie, destroying it with a single blow. A confident smile on his face, Dale says, "Gotcha," as the zombie is completely annihilated. The protagonist then picks up the zombie's fallen sword and prepares to continue the fight. Weapon in hand, the MC unleashes a flurry of quick, precise strikes on the other zombies. The competitors are stunned to see one of the zombies defeated with such apparent ease. The boy explains that he reforged its bones to enhance the sword's durability, making it much stronger. His new weapon in hand, the protagonist charges forward to face the remaining zombies in the arena. He cleanly severs the arm of one zombie and prepares for his next attack with a determined look. Leaping into the air, Dale brings his sword down in a powerful arc, destroying another zombie. The boy pants from the exertion but doesn't give up, continuing to fight with all his might. With a series of rapid strikes, he demolishes the remaining zombies, clearing the battlefield. The snobbish noble is shocked to see that even his last remaining undead soldier has been defeated. The snobbish noble mutters that a mage shouldn't be able to handle a sword so proficiently. Sword in hand, Dale approaches his last opponent, who screams in pure fear and panic. The noble pleads with the young master to wait, saying he surrenders, but the MC doesn't listen. A confident smile on his face, the protagonist says it's not like he's actually going to be eliminated. Without a hint of hesitation, the boy strikes him with the sword, and his necklace shatters, ending his trial. The noble calls him a monster as the MC observes the outcome of the battle with a satisfied expression. The results are announced. Young Master Dale passes alone, with an astonishing 60 life points. The crowd erupts in applause, and the protagonist feels a surge of pride at his overwhelming victory. A confident smile on his face, the boy tells everyone to watch closely, for this is only his first step. For the second level of the trial, the challenge is to defeat a guardian creature known as a flesh golem. Typically, the survivors of the first level would cooperate, but Dale has eliminated all of them. The MC faces the colossal golem alone, steeling himself for the impending battle. Unlike the first level, all forms of magic are now permitted in this combat. Although the no artifact rule still applies, the protagonist states that this is more than enough. For the boy, this is the perfect opportunity to truly test the limits of his third circle. The flesh golem attacks with a mighty punch, which the MC manages to dodge by a hair's breadth. With an angry grunt, the monster glares at him, preparing its next attack. The golem tries to snatch him with its giant hands, but the protagonist is far too quick for it. The MC forms a magic circle, preparing to cast a powerful spell on the flesh golem. A confident smile on his face, he unleashes the spell Accelerated Decay at the monster. From a distance, Secretary Eris and the Duke observe the young master's magic, finding it highly unusual. The flesh golem's hand begins to rot away, and he wonders why the boy would do such a thing. In his past life, the protagonist learned that this kind of strategy was just as crucial as raw firepower. A look of disgust on his face, the MC pinches his nose, complaining about the stench of the decomposing flesh. Eris wonders if they realize they are witnessing a live demonstration of biochemical warfare. That day, Dale completed the trial all the way up to the 10th level, setting a new, unbreakable record. Meanwhile, the other participants were given a second chance to retake the first level. That same evening after the trial, the protagonist stands before a fountain, reflecting on his life. Suddenly, his teacher Cephia calls his name, and he turns to greet her with a warm smile. The elf praises him for his splendid performance, and the MC thanks her for her invaluable teachings. A proud smile on her face, the master says that hearing that makes her incredibly proud of her student. The boy then calls her name, and the teacher looks at him with a curious expression and a gentle smile. A look of excitement in his eyes, the protagonist asks her out on a date, which completely shocks the elf. The MC explains there's a festival in the city, and he thinks they should go together and have some fun. A bit flustered by the invitation, the teacher agrees, and the boy celebrates with pure excitement. The elf thinks to herself that, technically, he's not wrong about it being a date and studies him. She assumes Dale must be confused and wonders if he is as dark on the inside as he seems. At the festival in the city of Necropolis, everyone is celebrating with joyous abandon. The teacher mentions he must be tired after the trial, but the boy assures her he feels fine. A smile on his face, the MC says there are still a few days until the next trial, so everything is all right. The two of them walk in comfortable silence through the festival, and the protagonist admires the beauty of the night. Suddenly, he comments on how beautiful the moon is, and his teacher looks at him with a gentle expression. A smile on her face, the elf agrees, saying the moon is indeed very lovely tonight. The MC sighs, noticing that conversation doesn't flow between them as easily as it once did. But he feels this silence isn't awkward. It's always been this way with Sephia. Perhaps because she believed in him from the very beginning, but he feels a strong desire to be closer to her. A few days prior, on the day he reached his third circle, he finally understood what Sephia had meant. To truly confront his inner world, he had to push past his limits and transcend the second circle. He had to overflow his mana capacity, enduring the overwhelming energy in order to evolve. Only by withstanding the furious, raging mana could he achieve his third circle of power. With an intense glow, his 3 mana circles take form, and he finally reaches his goal. Suddenly, a black sword materializes in his hand, a sight that completely shocks the protagonist. A curious look on his face, he wonders what this black sword is and where it came from. In the blink of an eye, he's transported to a snow-covered landscape, leaving him utterly confused. The protagonist wonders where he is and looks around, trying to get his bearings. He recalls that when one enters a deep state of meditation, they inevitably manifest their inner world. This is his inner world, his world of realization, a place of profound emptiness and darkness. There had been nothing here from the beginning, just absolute nothingness and a deep, aching loneliness. And into that hollow world, Master Sephia had extended her hand, offering him hope. Maybe that's why he sees her as the sole person capable of bringing light into his dark world. With a sincere look in his eyes, the protagonist confesses his feelings to his master, telling her he likes her very much. The elf is stunned by his declaration and asks him to repeat what he just said. A confident smile on his face, the boy repeats that he likes her a lot, and the teacher looks at him. A gentle smile on her face, the master seems to understand the boy's feelings and embraces him. In a tender moment, she holds him close, telling him she also likes him very much as her student. The MC hugs her back, thinking that living a second life certainly has its perks. He thanks his master for her kindness, and the two of them enjoy the moment together at the festival. A few days later, the protagonist is on the 11th level of the trial, reflecting on his life. He laments his lack of progress with Sephia, suspecting she still sees him as just a child. The boy decides to focus on the exam and put romance on the back burner. His revenge is more important. The trial's format is a one-on-one magical duel, with the victor advancing to the next level. His opponent introduces himself as Albert Rosenheim, a third circle master, and glares at him. A small smile on his face, the protagonist observes him, and Albert tells him not to expect an easy fight. The 11th level permits the use of all types of artifacts and mage strategies. With the artifact restrictions lifted, the boy states he no longer has to hold back and intends to crush him. The duel commences and the MC prepares for battle with a determined expression. Albert casts a powerful spell, warning the boy to be on his guard, as he's no mere amateur. A confident smile on his face, the mage declares the protagonist's winning streak ends here. He then unleashes a shower of black arrows at the boy, a look of victory in his eyes. But with a defiant smile, Dale tells him to see if he can block his next attack. The mage sneers that the young lord's confidence will only get him so far and launches another assault. The battle intensifies and the protagonist finds himself facing a relentless barrage of magical attacks. In a fluid motion, the boy uses his cloak to shield himself from the wave of dark energy. Dale realizes that launching an attack before the duel had even officially started is cheating. But since there's no signal to stop the fight, he understands the judges are curious to see his abilities. A look of disgust on his face, the MC mutters that this is exactly why he can't stand the mages of this tower. Albert seizes the opportunity and prepares to summon his creations to attack the protagonist. With a sharp command, he summons his minions, ordering them to swear eternal obedience to him. The protagonist finds the chant utterly ridiculous and feels second-hand embarrassment just watching. But he has to admit Albert's skill is a cut above that of the novices he faced earlier. Albert's minions charge forward, and the protagonist nimbly dodges their attacks. The mage mocks him, asking how long he plans to keep dodging and running away. One of the minions swings an axe at him, but the MC manages to evade it at the very last second. A determined look on his face, the protagonist prepares his counter-attack and faces his opponent. The boy then uses his magic to erect a barrier, shielding himself from the minions' attacks. A smirk on his face, Albert asks if that's all he has to show for himself in this battle. The mage then orders his minions to self-destruct, a command that shocks the protagonist. The massive explosion of dark energy engulfs the boy, the sheer force of it blasting him backward. A victorious smile on his face, Albert declares that the victory is his and peers into the smoke. But as he looks closer, he realizes something is wrong and that the duel is far from over. Albert wonders when the boy got over there, and where he could have possibly gone during the explosion. Suddenly, the protagonist appears behind him, questioning if cheating against a child isn't a bit cowardly. The mage spins around, startled, and demands to know where on earth the boy was and how he escaped. A small smile plays on the MC's lips as he notes how confused he looks and faces him with a challenging gaze. The boy compliments his surprise attack but says he's still a long way from being able to defeat him. A look of pure hatred on his face, Albert prepares for another attack, and the protagonist watches him. Suddenly, the creature from the shadow cloak begins to whisper hungrily in his mind. With a permissive smile, the MC allows the creature to attack, and it manifests in a terrifying form. He tells it to go ahead but warns it not to get carried away, and the creature lunges at Albert. From a distance, the other mages watch the scene in horror, terrified by the power of the shadow creature. The monster attacks Albert, sinking its sharp teeth into him, causing him to scream in pain and panic. The boy remarks that it seems the creature got a little too excited due to its hunger. Albert begs him to spare him, but the protagonist ignores his pleas, watching with an amused smile. With a sharp command of down, the MC orders the creature to release the mage and let him go. Lying defeated on the ground, Albert is declared the loser, and Dale the victor of the duel's first round. A confident smile on his face, the protagonist prepares for the next challenge and calls for the next mage. But his next opponent immediately surrenders, saying he wants to live and refuses to fight him. A small smile on his face, the MC advances to the third round, and the competition continues. From that point on, Dale automatically advanced in every match, except for one that required actual combat. After that, he refined and perfected his 3 circles, defeating each guardian one after the other. When he reached the 20th level, a truly worthy opponent finally appeared before the protagonist. The guardian of that floor was the Headless Horseman, mounted on his skeletal steed. Personally created by the Elder of the Black Tower, the horseman was an unparalleled foe. A confident smile on his face, the MC prepares for battle, thinking that predictable things are boring. He then channels his magic, preparing to face the Headless Horseman in a proper duel. The protagonist and the guardian face off, and the battle is about to begin in the arena. The spectators are stunned by the scene, wondering what in the world is happening. Suddenly, the Headless Horseman dismounts from his horse and kneels before the boy. The guardian bows its head in respect, a completely unexpected move that shocks everyone present. The MC observes it, and in his inner world, he once again finds himself facing the Headless Horseman. In a landscape of snow and ice, the two face each other, and the protagonist gives an order. With a sharp command to end yourself, the horseman obeys and self-destructs. The guardian shatters into countless pieces, and the boy watches with a serious expression. He wonders how a mere creation could abandon its role as a guardian to swear loyalty to him. A look of surprise on his face, the protagonist says, "Coops," realizing he may have gone a bit too far. The audience stares at him in shock, and the MC feels a little embarrassed by the situation. He understands they're stunned that a creation would betray its own master to pledge loyalty to him. The boy feels he's proven enough and decides it's time to head back and conclude the trial. The spectators demand to know where he's going as the MC turns towards the exit. The protagonist knows that even if he could continue, there is a line he must not cross. If he were to ascend any higher, he would become something unknown, and with that, Dale's trial came to an end. With the conclusion of the Tower trial, news of his incredible feats spread far and wide. The entire Black Tower paid homage with military precision to the arrival of their new Tower Master. Not just the noble houses of Saxon, but every mage in the Black Tower bowed their heads to him. Fueled by Dale's overwhelming achievements, the entire northern region slowly began to rally under his leadership. In the Northern Empire, within the Duchy of Saxon, the battle against the monsters raged on without respite. Uncle Helmet fights bravely against the enemies, protecting the territory with his mighty spear. A determined look on his face, he charges forward, demonstrating his strength and skill as a sword master. The knights cry out for young Lord Dale and for House Saxon as they surge into battle. After completing the Tower trial, the protagonist was given command of the campaign against the Orc Horde. Uncle Helmet smashes his enemies with his warhammer, showcasing his raw power on the battlefield. It was an absurdly heavy responsibility for a 10-year-old child, but he accepted it without question. As the legitimate heir of the Black Duke, he gradually began to unite the entire northern region. A confident smile on his face, the boy prepares for yet another battle, leading his troops from the front. Back at the castle, the Duke receives a report that they have eliminated 145 orcs. The father then inquires about the cavalry's losses, and the boy reports that they were minimal. Uncle Helmet asks if he used magic to protect them, but the MC denies it with a serious look. The protagonist states it was solely thanks to the skill of House Saxon's swords, and the Duke smiles. A look of pride on his face, the father praises his son's excellent work and congratulates him on the victory. The uncle remarks that the young lord has already grown accustomed to commanding a cavalry unit. Uncle Helmet had been teaching him swordsmanship, strategy, tactics, and the art of war from a very young age. At this rate, the day he commands his own territory in a full-scale war is not far off. A small smile on his face, the protagonist says that a new stage is always welcome. On a training field, young Charlotte charges with a war cry, attacking Dale. The two exchange sword blows at a dizzying speed, the intensity of their duel surprising. A determined look on her face, the girl channels her aura to strengthen her attacks, putting pressure on the MC. In a swift, precise move, she attempts to strike him, but the protagonist manages to defend. The two are locked in a stalemate, their mutual skill with a sword truly impressive. In a fluid motion, the boy disarms her, sending her sword flying away in the middle of their training. The protagonist nimbly dodges her attacks, and the battle becomes increasingly fierce. A serious look on his face, Dale prepares for the next attack, and the girl looks at him with admiration. The MC compliments the young swordswoman on her improvement, and she looks at him with a defiant gaze. The girl retorts that he talks as if it's someone else's problem, and the protagonist laughs. She reminds him he's already a third circle mage and has cleared the 20th level of the tower trial. Since then, everyone only ever talks about him, and she asks if he isn't tired of all the attention. With a smile, the boy tells her not to worry, assuring her that she will also grow stronger. He encourages her, saying that Charlotte will also grow to become a great swordswoman. The girl gets a bit flustered and tells him not to treat her like a little kid. The protagonist points out that she is in fact a kid, and the young swordswoman glares at him angrily. She then accuses him of being a kid too, a comeback that leaves the MC speechless. With a confident smile, the protagonist declares that he's already an adult, which embarrasses the girl. Later, Uncle Helmut summons young Lord Dale for another lesson in strategy. The knight sits with the boy, preparing for the day's lesson on the tactics of war. He reveals that in today's lesson, the MC will be learning the hammer and anvil tactic. The uncle explains that when cavalry forces are deployed on one or both sides of a formation, the cavalry breaks through the enemy's flank to encircle them, while the infantry holds off the counter-attack. This is the hammer and anvil tactic, so named because like striking metal on an anvil with a hammer. The protagonist reflects that no matter the world, the fundamental nature of warfare never really changes. Suddenly, Uncle Helmut calls his name, asking how Charlotte's training is progressing. The knight becomes thoughtful, saying that while her training can't compare to the boys, he admits the young swordswoman's progress is remarkable, and that she possesses great potential. Her foundation in swordsmanship is already solid, and she will soon begin learning Ara techniques and the family style. The MC notes that the main concern is the compatibility between her sword style and theirs. Just as mages refine mana, knights can also refine and store it, calling it Kora. And just as mages form towers as their power structures, knights establish quarters. They form these hoarders to pass down their sword legacies and preserve their unique traditions. The Black Cavalry, for example, charges like war chariots, shattering entire battlefields. The Northern Knights base their swordsmanship on raw power and overwhelming, brute force. The problem is that Charlotte's sword style is built on speed and agility, not brute strength. Considering her talent, she might just barely make it into the ranks of the 7 swords. But she will never be able to reach the first sword, the absolute pinnacle of swordsmanship and power. The flower sword, the title once held by her father, was the apex of the 7 swords. A look of admiration in his eyes, the protagonist recalls the legend of the flower sword. Uncle Helmut laments that this unique sword style vanished with the fall of the knight's kingdom. A look of deep regret on his face, the knight wonders if that style is truly gone forever. The protagonist then wonders if his father's swordsmanship has truly been lost to the world. As Dale continued to build his reputation through relentless training and monster subjugations, the time finally came to test the results of his training in a real and challenging battle. In the throne room, the Duke is stunned by the news a messenger has just delivered. Baron Fokker, from a neighboring territory, is laying claim to the duchy's copper mine. The MC reflects that the borders between nations and domains are not as clearly defined as one might think. Furthermore, if the Duke refuses to cede the mine, thereby agreeing to a domain war, the Grand Duke of Brandenburg has backed the Baron's claim in exchange for a cut of the profits. He will dispatch the Order of St. Magdalene to fight alongside the Baron in the domain war. A look of pure fury on his face, the protagonist realizes the Grand Duke has not forgotten his humiliation. A small smile plays on the boy's lips as he deciphers the enemy's strategy and prepares for battle.